It is your prisonplanet.tv memberships that fund so much of what we do here in this operation. And then we're more than happy for the TV show after it's aired live, then be leaked out onto the web to tens of millions of people. That's our goal. Ladies and gentlemen, we are live. It is Friday, the 30th day of November 2012, and former Congresswoman Cynthia Mckinney is scheduled to join us in the second hour. Then Jason Rink and Tom Woods. Jason Rink will be in studio. They're moving forward with the Nullification secession movement, as the media has been dubbing it. But that's not really what it is, so we're going to be explaining that and continuing my call for a new Declaration of Independence to restore the Republic and get it out of the hands of the globalists that brag that they've conquered this country. The piece is almost done, and then Aaron's got to export it because it's in HD. But there's a piece we've been working on for 3 days here that deals with J.P. Morgan Chase running a TV ad during Thanksgiving and still running it, implying that they brought you America, implying that everything good in this country is because of them. And so I thought we'd go over the real history of J.P. Morgan Chase, because they claim what they're doing is free market. It's the opposite and is destroying any free market we could ever have and our prosperity. Even more evil than Goldman Sachs is J.P. Morgan Chase. So that should be done sometime in the third hour. And so we're going to be premiering that here on the radio today. If it's not ready, it'll be on the InfoWars Nightly News tonight. It's pretty powerful. Aaron Dykes and I put it together. And Aaron has been up much of the night putting the finishing touches on it. So that is coming up as well. Also, we're launching to bring attention to the drone invasion. The first ever drone mob next Saturday at Zilker Park in Austin, Texas. There's a video that Melissa Melton and Jakari Jackson put together. We'll air that today if we have time. If not, it's up at Infowars.com right now. Last night, my wife gets up in the middle of the night sometimes and reads news. So she doesn't wake me up, but she sits there and text messages me articles from her iPad or cell phone to my cell phone. And for whatever reason, she was texting me articles at about 3 a.m. right next to me. And I heard the buzzing and woke up. So there we were both reading this article together at 3 a.m. this morning. And then I couldn't go back to sleep. And I don't say this to build up the suspense. I say it because I don't build up the suspense properly. I sat there and read like a 15-page article. It's 15 pages printed out from the Daily Mail. And the Daily Mail, it's a good article, but they haven't been studying this for 20 years like I have. And so as bad as this article is, it wasn't 1/10 of what's really going on. And guys, will you print me the bio on Wesley Smith? Also, I am that to you. I don't think I saw that here. I know you thought it was for guest info, but Wall Street Journal writer Wesley Smith, best-selling author of Culture of Death. In fact, you guys, I have a copy of it at home, but I forgot to bring it. Will you print me the Amazon on that? We don't sell it. We should. I'm going to get him back on, I think, 2 hours next week sometime to go over this, because he chronicles in the book and in the Wall Street Journal. I've been interviewing him about 14, 15 years. Haven't had him on probably 6 or 7. Where they take people who are paralyzed chest down and begging for food and water, and they kill them here in the U.S. and England. And it's a standard globalized deal. And then every time I cover it, we open the phones up and nurses and doctors call in and say, yeah, I'm in the break room right now. They're killing 3 people on my floor right now. One of them's chained down begging. Once you're a ward of the state, even if you can walk, they'll murder you. We're going to explain one of the biggest secrets coming up. More so than ever before, this broadcast is an absolute must-listen. The global government is openly being announced, run by private megabanks hell-bent on destroying sovereign nations and free markets and replacing it with above-the-law corporate fascist global combines, using socialism at the grassroots to make the public dumbed down and dependent. We have an absolute total information overload today. Even the Daily Beast, the Newsweek group, says no answers in death of coroner linked to Andrew Breitbart. We told you he was killed with arsenic at the time. That's now come out, and there's basically no investigation going on. Breitbart, the evidence points towards being murdered because they announced he died of natural causes in less than an hour before any coroner had even looked at him. We've got that in the stack. That's not even our top story. There's just so much here. The West is backing al-Qaeda in the takeover of Syria. It is so incredibly immoral, and they are now reporting in the Weekly Standard. They're claiming, oh, surface-to-air anti-aircraft missiles, oh, they got them from the Syrian government to shoot down Syrian helicopters and jets. No, they got them in Libya from Gaddafi, and al-Qaeda was given that by NATO, and that's on record. So they're now already trying to say that missiles that are going to be shooting down passenger liners undoubtedly in the near future, they're going to blame it on Assad and think the public is that dumb. They're using the missiles to bring down Assad and put al-Qaeda in charge, just like they've done in Libya and the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, and they think you're so stupid. They're all over the news, not just the Weekly Standard, saying, oh, they're turning the tide against Assad in the 20-month war because they've got anti-aircraft missiles from Assad at bases they've taken. Absolute, total, and complete bull. But they admit in the back of the paper that CIA, MI6, and others have commandos on the ground with U.S. Special Forces lasing targets to take over that country and to blow up the churches, kill the Jews, which is going on, and it's in the foreign papers, but not here. It is unbelievable. And then you or I are told we have to give up our rights because of al-Qaeda when the bankers that have hijacked this country run al-Qaeda. And I just don't think you're that stupid. I mean, even neocon radio's having to talk about this now. I mean, just shame on all of you that have gotten behind the police state. You are destroying our country and our future and the golden goose that has made this country so productive. The dollar is on the way out. They're going to move towards global SDR, cashless systems backed by the IMF and World Bank, and those systems backed by global carbon taxes, global VAT. It's all been announced at Davos, the $100 trillion plan, Associated Press, London Guardian, London Telegraph. We've covered it ad nauseum. But they have to incrementally bankrupt things, Europe, the U.S., the rest of the world, while mopping up the few rogue nations the globalists don't control, while posing as saviors, and then saying, oh, my gosh, we're going to go completely bankrupt. Our debt's too great if we don't pass VAT and carbon taxes. And that's what you'll see this year or in the next 2 to 3 years. They're already proposing it. And, well, I don't want my 401k to go down to zero. The stock market just dropped 4,000 points. We better accept all these new taxes so the government can nationalize all the 401ks and everything and shore up the dollar. And then a few years after that, things won't be shored up. Just look at Europe. 3, quote, bailouts. That's just 3 implosions, consolidating things and taking the new tax money that implodes the economy further and paying it to the globalist. And then they're going to just get rid of cash entirely. You will still have $100 and $1,000 bills. And this has been the stated plan by the Federal Reserve. That's why they've changed it with color money and stuff, getting you ready for this. But they will have digital tracker chips in them, which $5 bills and up already have. And with those devices, but also scannable fronts, it will track each bill and its full history. So it is a cashless note. And the big banks are exempt from all that. They can launder hundreds of billions in drug money. They won't get in trouble. It'll just be to totally control your life, like Louisiana did last year, banning cash and secondhand transactions. That's going to go worldwide. And here it is out of the Associated Press today. Congress looks at doing away with the $1 bill. I was on drudgereport.com a minute ago, and they've got the $1 bill with Obama's face on it. Maybe we can punch that up for people watching at InfoWarsNews.com. And it says the end of the dollar bill right there. But yeah, there it is, Obama on the cover, the end of the dollar bill. And there's also another thing where you've got French socialists. We're just doing what Obama does. Obama's nationalized is a very modern step to take, the French say. Yes, see, again, nationalization. But that means by private interest that control the nationalization. It's even worse than kind of a de Gaulle-style nationalization. All right, continuing here. Congress looks at doing away with the $1 bill. American consumers have shown about as much appetite for the $1 coin as kids do their spinach. You're like children, see. Oh, you don't know best. They may not know what's best for them either. Oh, it's always the condescension. Because the people that write and work for the system, they're all on these power trips. I've met hundreds of them. It's all part of, they know everybody's being lied to. They know things are corrupt, but they think they're winners just going along with it and playing games with it. Congressional auditors say doing away with the dollar bills entirely, or replacing them with dollar coins, could save taxpayers $4.4 billion over the next 30 years. Oh, yes. Vending machine operators have long championed the use of $1 coins because they don't jam the machines. And it just goes on. And then, of course, they can issue less of the coins. That's actually the plan with the General Accounting Office, but they don't tell you that. They're just phasing out cash altogether. So that is some of the news. We've got some good news, at least on the surface. U-turn, Senate moves to eliminate indefinite detention provision of the N.D.A.A. Also, F.A.A. drone operators have zero privacy obligations. Agency is now going to use drones to grab your wireless communications and your data and mark your homes and track you. Well, of course, it's Skynet. Also, we have headlines like this out of L.A., CBS News. City attorney tells San Bernardino residents to lock their doors, load their guns because of police downsizing. And the city is chastising them, saying, don't say that. All over the country, they're laying off police and then hiring code enforcers. Or making police kind of a metro model where part of the police are code enforcers. So you're dealing with a code enforcer with a badge and a gun. Look out. Because they write those codes, any objectionable material, we $2,000 a day fines. Well, now they're up to $5,000 in some municipalities. And a cop shows up with a gun and you're like, well, it's 2-inch grass. They're like, I find it objectionable. Hey, you can't have this garden. Well, the city says you can have gardens front or backyard. Sorry, if you're in Deerfield, Michigan, sorry, we say it's objectionable. This is the new tyranny, Agenda 21, that Rosa Corey's book, Behind the Green Mask, that we sell at Infowars.com, breaks down. But all of that is coming up today, and I dovetail that with AutoZone employee fired after taking action against fake beard bandit. The fake beard bandit had robbed dozens and dozens, more than 30 businesses on the peninsula. So the guy had a gun out threatening people. The guy went out the back door, got his gun, came in, stopped the guy, and he's in big trouble. In fact, they're talking about criminal charges now because you don't protect yourself. You don't protect yourself. You just go grovel in fear. So the city attorney is in trouble for telling the truth. The police are in trouble all over the country for telling the truth and saying you should arm yourself. The idea that government can and will protect you. Police have no liability to protect you because they can't. They are to respond under state and federal law, depending on which type they are, when a crime is committed, to bring you before a grand jury. And then to bring you, ultimately, if it goes to trial, before a jury, because we the people run things. They are to seek you out. They are not to enforce laws. They are peace officers when they see the peace being broken, when they see bullies doing something, when they see if they see a crime, they're to respond. But their main job is to take you to jail to then have a fair trial, to go to prison or to not go to prison. They are to go out and get you alive, preferably. But if it's violent crimes and you've been known to kill innocent people, then the court says dead or alive. This person has been shown to be violent and killing people, dead or alive. But then you've got to be told by the court, dead or alive. You've got to be given a death warrant, dead or alive. Instead, now they have SWAT teams with a dead or alive precept under false law who say, well, we think drugs might be involved, so we're going to come in and kill anybody that doesn't put their hands up in 1/2 second who may be half asleep. You see, I happen to have studied common law. I happen to have studied not just the Declaration of Independence, Bill of Rights, Constitution, but the Magna Carta. I've read it. You should read it. See, I know the 800-plus years of our law that's based on even more ancient common sense law that's all been worked out down throughout the ages. I want that back. I want my due process back. I want it back right now. All right, continuing here, ladies and gentlemen. I have some news that the magnitude is so great. But plus, it's something that I know. But then when I say it on air, it's so off the chart, I feel like a liar, even though I personally have gone and witnessed it. And I promise you this, my prime directive is to expose euthanasia against people in state custody who can walk. They are now killing people who can walk who are in state custody. They're now killing people who are mentally ill. And it's going on by the Eugenics Bioethics Guild, and it's finally in the news. So at the bottom of the hour, I'm going to do a special report on that. We're going to come back with more news in the next segment. I'll also give you a review from the boil down of World War Z. It ties into the dehumanization program. It's all coming up. Massive broadcast today. Congresswoman Cynthia Mckinney and more. All right, coming up in the next segment, I am going to break down a in-depth report out of the Daily Mail that's in the British Medical Journal. It's in a bunch of other newspapers, but the Mail has the biggest, most in-depth article. Now sick babies go on death pathway. Doctors' haunting testimony reveals how children are put on end-of-life plan. And they're starved to death. And again, this focuses on babies. It describes 14-year-olds begging for food and water, blood coming out of their mouth as they are dehydrated over 14 days. And again, I've been covering this for at least since 1998 when I discovered this was going on. This is premeditated. This is planned. This is globally standardized. They are now killing people who can walk. I'm going to say that again. We have their names. They are now killing people who can walk here in the United States, England, and Europe. It's all standardized. You remember Paul Watson broke that article back in February, that then got picked up by Fox News, Reuters, you name it. Ethicists argue killing newborn babies should be allowed in the prestigious Journal of Medical Ethics. They said we need to kill children up to age 3, including healthy children if the parents don't want them. And you're like, well, that doesn't sound real. For 3 days when this article came out, people thought it wasn't real, even though there was a link to the Journal of Medical Ethics. And then it became a national story. Folks, this has been going on a long time. It's called eugenics, and this is the tip of the iceberg. Now, I'm going to read this coming up, and I think everybody should hear it, including children, so you know what's happening. But I will describe children begging for mommy, shriveled up with blood pouring out of their eyes. And they call it, this is what's really sick about it, they call this the humane way to kill them. I mean, we're so far gone, ladies and gentlemen. So that is coming up in the next segment. And you want to know why I get dark, why I get angry about things? We're going to do 2 hours next week if you can do it. He hadn't been on in years, and I've given you his contact info, guys. I want Wesley Smith, the Wall Street Journal writer, on. He's probably been on 10 times in the past. And this is one of those things that I cover over and over again, and then 5, 6, 7 years passes, and I don't cover it. And then I will open the phones up, and I will take calls from nurses in the wards. You'll hear Dr. Walker sometimes in the background, and they will describe, no, we got one on floor 3 right now begging for his life. He's chained down. When they get you and you sign yourself over to the state care so it's paid for, they will murder you. Hospitals, they haven't given the Hippocratic Oath in about 20 years. in Western medicine. They're there to kill you now. When you go in to have a child, they're going to take a blood sample, and if they find any drugs in your system, marijuana, prescription, usually it's false positive, you're a healthy wife, healthy baby, they're taking your kid. I got an article out of CBS News where people that have mild vision problems are having their kids taken. People that get in wheelchairs now, if they're taking them. I mean, the state is here to destroy you. And now with Obamacare, that's Paul Watson's newest article that just went up minutes ago, they will euthanize the old and the young. I mean, Tom Daschle wrote a book saying, yeah, you're above 65, you get a cane. You don't get eye surgery. And all these people that want their free Obama phone, their free this and that, they have no idea. And that ties into this report, but I'm going to try to focus and really cover this when we come back. 2013, N.D.A.A. expands power over military to detain citizens. See, each year now, the National Defense Authorization Act, that they put it in the defense bill, it gets worse each year. And it completely gets rid of posse comitatus and says they can put citizens in camps. That's already in the Army manuals from 2 years ago. Just type in Army Manual Re-Education Camp, and you'll get Army.mil. They use the term re-education camp. How you'll be taken, how you'll be re-educated. They use the Soviet term. See, it's all about it being in your face now, because they got to act normal around the troops. It's normal. We take them to the interrogation area of the base. Yes, there have been some deaths at the base. Move on, men, or you'll be in here next. This is just getting a bunch of yes men in there. This is America. We're run by crooks now. They're trying to mop up talk radio. So many liners are coming in from affiliates that are talking about where they want me to cut liners about tune in today to hear the non-state run media. I cut 2 liners for 2 stations in different parts of the country owned by different companies saying the same thing. People are getting it. I just cut them this morning. I'm cutting like 10 liners a week for stations. We're getting a lot of stations right now, which is a symbol of the awakening. That's good. It better happen 10 times this. I'm here risking my life, folks. As fast as we're growing, as big a thorn as we are in the side of the New World Order, folks, you better know I'm risking my life bringing you this. And AM and FM stations you're listening to us on, if you're a local business owner, you better call them right now and sponsor the show. You better call them. If you're listeners, you better call them right now and support their sponsors. Because let me tell you something. The fact that we're getting on so many big stations now shows we got a chance to beat these people. It shows that station managers and owners that used to think I was a nut now realize this stuff's real and are trying to fight for this country's future. You need to fight with them. Okay. We have classical tyranny run by authoritarian psychopaths, to quote Ron Paul, taking over our society. And to understand this next report I'm about to cover, because it's finally back in mainstream news again. This has been going on for at least 20 years in Europe, England, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and the United States. It's global, standardized, exact same bioethicist boards. They've gotten rid of the Hippocratic Oath, do no harm, and now doctors are being turned into federal administrators of death. Death panels, which Bill Gates admits is in the legislation, cutting back the health care, making you buy overpriced health care, insurance companies owned by big mega banks who wrote health care, pre-existing conditions not covered, people in England and Europe waiting on average 18 months for totally operable surgeries. If it's within the first few months, totally inoperable. If it's after 6 months, they wait till it metastasizes. They kill you. They have actuaries. If you're retired, you don't get surgery. Do you understand this? You aren't allowed to go to a private hospital in England unless you've gone to the government one and then been refused treatment. Then you might get in to see a private physician, and then it's incredibly expensive. Paul Watson, for 3 weeks, had a cold, couldn't get rid of it, got scared. Went to the government doctors. They wouldn't help him. They give him a little pack with some Kleenex and some aspirin and some lozenges in it. Wouldn't even do a swab. I can drive down to a little clinic right now, like Victory Clinic, say in Austin, Texas. Go there some every once in a while when I need something. Before they give me medication or something, they do a swab. They say they're going to call me in 6 hours. They send it to a lab, and they say it's viral, can't take antibiotics, or it is this bacteria, here's this wide-spectrum antibiotic. But my children occasionally go to different pediatricians. They'll just say, here's some antibiotics. Well, aren't you going to do a swab? It's total quackery. And now they've got all these big healthcare groups getting out of dentistry, getting out of medical care, getting out of surgery. People are just getting out of it. Doctors are quitting by the hundreds of thousands in the last 3 years. Hundreds of thousands have quit. Hundreds of thousands. Because they're told on a computer, you've got to go into a computer now if you take Medicare or Medicaid, and you've got to tell it, okay, here's what the patient I think has, and it tells you your list of options. It tells you the drug you can use. It will tell you to use a new expensive drug that you don't think even works and won't even let you use an old confirmed drug. My dad's an oral surgeon, a dentist. He manages, 18 dental offices. He consults all over the country for medical systems. He ought to get him on the air. I've had Dr. Blaylock, brain surgeon, former university professor. He quit because of all this. He'll tell you the exact same thing my dad will tell you. Ron Paul, medical doctor, he'll tell you the same thing. This is the reality. This is the reality. Now, what they do is, before I get to this huge news, is and they've done this in Europe already, they've done this in England. They tell you, we're going to come out with a national health service. They do that parallel to a private health service. Then they use that to bankrupt the private health service by making it be part of the public health service. Then government comes in to lower costs because it always bankrupts things and says, well, we're not going to give you a knee surgery if you're over 60. We're not going to give you an eye surgery if you're over 65. We're making you do prenatal screening, and it shows your child is at risk of a genetic disorder developing it. We're going to force an abortion. By the way, I saw an article 2 weeks ago where they forced an abortion on a handicapped woman, saying there was a chance her child might have it. Was it multiple sclerosis? Ladies and gentlemen, they can look into anybody and find genetic traits that may flick on. This is a total Brave New World Gattaca tyranny. And Gattaca and Brave New World are based on the top eugenics family that came out of a genetic breeding program from 1852 until 1925 when the program was terminated. The Huxleys, the Wedgwoods, the Galtons, the Darwins, and one other family. I cover it in Endgame. This is what runs everything. This is the heart of it all. By 1935, close to 40 states, 33 had total, the 39 had partial, where they would take children if they had low test scores or their parents did, or if someone had a tic, as they called it, a neurological disorder, they would pull up with a truck in the United States. The Nazis got it all from us. We got it from England. Mexico did this too. It was all the rage. They would come in and grab your children. Black, white, they didn't care, mainly white. Because their view was all the blacks were subhuman, so just use them as basically as fodder. But they said they would go and grab white children. They had newsreels. I show you newsreels in Endgame where it shows them taking people and killing babies. Doctors killing babies. This is from the 30s. A doctor killing a baby. In these short films they would show before movies, when the talkies first came out. Before that, they were silent. Or that's somebody playing a piano in there. This is all an Endgame. All I've done is read over 100 books on this. I mean, this is them saying it. This is not my opinion. Now, I want you to listen to me. I'm going to read out of this Daily Mail article. But I want you to understand something. This is a whitewash. And not because the Daily Mail writer, Fionn Marquet, is bad, but because they haven't studied it. The doctors are going public that they watch babies, children, 14-year-olds, begging, shriveling up, their tongue stuck to their mouth, blood coming out of their eyes. Dehydration is ultra painful. On average, it takes about 14 days to murder somebody with it. And they call it humane. See, they know how to do something totally sick, because they're psych warfare experts. They do something over the top and then just act like it's normal. Just like they're putting cameras in for 10 years in school showers with elementary school girls at PE. And the news is like, what's the big deal having a camera in the shower? It's all to be over the top, to break your will, okay? Now, at 3 a.m., I hear bzzz, bzzz. My wife's next to me on her phone reading articles. She wakes up sometimes in the middle of the night. And I wake up and I start reading it. And we're sitting there in the dark reading. And I read the whole Daily Mail article, and I can't go back to sleep. 15 pages. And while I'm reading it, I'm getting frustrated that they don't understand the full story, not even 5% of it, that I'm not articulate enough to explain to you how bad this is and how real it is. I'm not exaggerating. It's worse than I can tell you. And I want to carry this book in the bookstore so everybody has it front and center, but I'm going to plug it right now, too. His book, Culture of Death, Wesley Smith, Wall Street Journal writer, he has taken photos. He has interviewed them. He has gone in to the hospitals where people can walk, but they don't have any family. They get signed in as wards of the state, and they actually chain you down while you beg for food and water. And I've had the nurses call in and say, it's incredible. This old woman, I was sneaking her ice cubes. They had her tied down, and they dehydrated her to death. Once they get the bioethics board to say, yeah, you got a breast cancer, we're not going to treat it. It would take 6 years to grow on average till it kills you. We're just going to go ahead and deny you food and water. And these people go, honey, can I have a little ice? And nurses get fired when they bring them ice. They're murdering people in the town I live in, Austin, right now. Murdering them. They've got whole floors of execution going on. Just like they have whole floors of saying it's the law when it's not the law, all the nurses have to take all these vaccines. Now courts are ruling they're going to give kids shot without parental consent. California passed a law. It's happening, okay? It's happening, right? And they use poster child like, oh, look at Terry Schiavo. You know, we argue whether she's brain dead or not. Well, let's dehydrate someone who's brain dead to set the precedent while they're killing people. Now, you remember, to begin, back in February, Paul Watson got an email from a listener, a tip, this is how it works, saying, hey, I'm a doctor, the prestigious medical ethics journal, the Journal of Medical Ethics says what you've been covering, Peter Singer's been calling for at Princeton, killing children up to 3, killing Down syndrome children when they're 20, killing handicaps. Again, the government's claiming they like handicapped folks and want to give you accessibility to play the part of the good guy, just like they did with blacks in the 20s and 30s. Oh, we're the liberals. We're going to give you government funds now to live the way we say. Well, I mean, the Margaret Sanger memos are public. She said, we're going to kill these animals. Her words. We're going to kill these weeds. We got to pose as liberals. This whole we're going to take care of handicap stuff, it's about killing you. So, but it's about controlling the lobbies that speak for you, so you think, oh my gosh, the government's the one that protects us. Yeah, they're going to give you a paved walkway for your wheelchair right into an incinerator. They're going to send you into the showers for delousing. I mean, it's hygiene. They care about you. We've got a ghetto. We've got a ghetto for you to go live in so people don't bust out your shop windows. Oh, well, this ghetto isn't safe. We've got a work facility for you. Oh, they're setting those up now. If they say when things collapse, you'll work in a government reservation facility. They've set up a model of it at the old Robert Mueller Airport here in Austin. And they got checkpoints and scanners, and there's some barbed wire and some stuff. But you know what? You know what? They care about you. Let me continue here. And they've learned as long as they label something as good, they go, oh, it's humane. We take babies that have muscular dystrophy, or we take Down syndrome babies. And again, it's going to move on to everybody. Because a lot of you go, well, let's get rid of those babies. I don't want to pay for them. Oh, really? You're going to wake up 65. You think you're 30-something today. You know, you're going to wake up 60. Or you're going to be in a car wreck. And they're going to be able to treat you in 100% recovery. But they're going to wink, wink. And the surgeon that's over you is going to be the head of the bioethics board in that hospital, and he's going to get probably $100,000 of the $400,000, $500,000 they're going to get out of your body. My dad's worked in hospitals, rewiring jaws, you name it. When I was going 15 to take my driver's test, he said, do not sign that organ donor card. I've been told that if you go in hurt in a wreck, even if you are operable and 100% recoverable, you'll be killed. And I thought my dad was a crazy liar. And then years later, it came out on 60 Minutes in the very city that I was from, Dallas. They were killing people. It's come out in the news. They kill people in the town I live in, Austin. Chicago's the most famous. They will kill you. They will kill you in a minute. They will take your children in these hospitals in a minute. Now, there are nice doctors, nice nurses working right next to the ringwraiths, but this is a takeover. Do you understand? They've been creeping around. So here was his article in February. Ethicists argue killing newborn babies should be allowed, February 28th. Here it is, March 1st, a few days later, Daily Mail. Doctors should have the right to kill unwanted or disabled babies at birth as they are not real persons, claims former Oxford academic. Now, here's the new article yesterday. Now sick babies go on death pathway. Doctor's haunting testimony reveals how children are put on end-of-life plan and how he was ordered to kill 10 babies alone at one hospital in 1 month. Here's another one. Medical Journal calls after-birth abortions, say infants aren't people, can be killed up to age 3. London Telegraph, killing babies no different, abortion experts say. February 29th, day after we first broke it. Medical Journal, legalize after-birth abortions. Fox News, Medical Journal advocates killing newborns, actually up to age 3. Now, who taught me about this in the late 1990s? Wesley J. Smith, award-winning author, researcher, senior fellow at Human Rights and Bioethics at the Discovery Institute. What did he write? He wrote Culture of Death. Available Amazon.com. We don't sell it. Get it. Read it. Read the names of the people and the testimonies where he's been there when someone's like, Wesley, please save me. And they get him and they throw him out, and 14 days later the person's dead. People that can walk, begging for their lives, blood pouring out. The nurses come in and cry and put bandages on them. They fight hard, but they are killed. And don't worry, nurses are reassigned, and Munchausen, by proxy, killers are brought in. And you know about killer nurses. They're a small percentage. There's a lot of murderers. Women have always killed throughout history by poison. They're not like men that come up and hack you up with a battle axe to your face. Women like poison. And psychological actuaries and criminology show that it's not men are more apt to be violent. It's that men are more likely to be overtly violent. Women will poison you. Women poison. And you've got a lot of psychopathic operators in these. And my dad worked at M.D. Anderson in high school and college in a research project. And he said a percentage of the cancer doctors really got off on people missing their lower mandibles and injecting people with deadly poisons who'd signed off on it as treatments. And would literally have the equivalent of orgasms watching people die. Okay? Now, you need to understand this, ladies and gentlemen. Joseph Mengele, you know about him? Learned everything from British and U.S. scientists. At Nuremberg, that was their defense. Now, what's the article I read last night that's 15 pages long that I intended to read on air? I don't know if I'm going to have time to read it all. You must go read all 15 pages. How they describe the babies looking like shriveled. You know, you have a tomato that looks healthy, how it shrivels up and turns black. Same deal. The baby's begging. The little boy's begging. The 14-year-old boy he describes begging. Okay, you need to understand this, folks. This is what they're doing. These are not liberals. These are the absolute scum of the earth. Now sick babies go on death pathway. Doctor's haunting testimony reveals how children are put on end-of-life plan. The practice of withdrawing food and fluid by tube used on young patients. Doctors admit starving and dehydrating 10 babies to death in neonatal unit. Liverpool care pathway, subject of independent inquiry ordered by ministers. Investigation including child patients who look at whether cash payments to hospitals to hit death pathway target have influenced doctors' decisions. There are literal bonuses to kill people that are operable. I mean, this is now, see, the media only covers people that it sounds like, well, they're, you know, that baby's retarded, kill them. No, sir. No, sir. It's people begging. Sick children are being discharged from NIH hospitals to die at their home or in hospices or controversial death pathways. Until now, end-of-life regime at Liverpool care pathway was thought to involve only elderly and terminally ill adults. Guess again. You can walk into these things and ask them to kill you, and they won't call it assisted suicide. They'll hook you up on morphine and kill you over a week. But the Mail can reveal the practice of withholding food and fluid by tube is being used on young patients as well as severely disabled newborn babies. Now, they'll also keep you alive if you're terminal, if you've got insurance and are rich. You can be brain dead. They'll give you double hip replacements. So there's the other end of that, too. It's all about control and money. But when it's government health care, they want you dead. And people go, well, we're all paying for this. Now we're socialized. Other people are going to have decisions on you. One doctor has admitted starving, dehydrating 10 babies to death in the neonatal unit of one hospital. Writing in a leading medical journal, physician revealed the process can take an average of 10 days, during which the baby becomes smaller and shrunken. And then it goes on to 14-year-old boys begging for their lives, blood pouring. You see, when you've been dehydrated, the skin starts cracking, blood starts coming out, your rectum, your eyes, your mouth. The tongue shrinks. You know, I'm going to do the World War Z review on the nightly news tonight, because I got former Congresswoman Cynthia Mckinney coming up, and I've got a really great filmmakers and experts on nullification coming up, and how to defeat the globalist. But the problem getting into a subject like this is that Wesley Smith has written, I don't know, it's got to be more than 50 articles for the Wall Street Journal. He's written a book on it. I'm going to get him on for 2 hours and give you the cases. Because the media is smart, the globalist media. They only cover some brain-dead person being turned off who's been on a coma for 20 years. And you hear about families that keep their family alive or keep somebody alive, and then it's made to look stupid. Even though my uncle was, my dad's brother was in a very bad motorcycle accident, was in a coma for 6 weeks. They wanted to unplug him immediately. He's got 2 healthy, happy, full-grown children. He has businesses. He's very successful. He has a little bit of a speech problem, but he lives a very fulfilled life. And he was 17 years old, demanded a motorcycle, raised his own money to get it, over the objections of my grandfather, got the motorcycle, went off and bought it with my grandmother. My grandfather, you know, there was so much excitement. He said, okay, you can have the motorcycle. A couple months later, boom. It's hit by a truck. The point is they wanted to unplug him. They wanted to take him off the feeding tube. This is like in 1968. And my family said no. And 6 weeks later came out of the coma. So you have to balance all of this. But there's no balance to this. Once you have socialist health care, could you have socialist health care run by angels? I mean, hypothetically, if giant spaceships landed run by some foreign robot race and said, we are here to make you live forever. We will give you life extension because, you know, we love your species. This is hypothetical. I'm not saying this is real for the media out there. Then I guess that's socialism. Something shows up and says it wants to give you something free. But see, this isn't some, you know, angel showing up to give you eternal life or to give you free health care. These are eugenicists. For heaven's sakes, read Margaret Sanger's letters. Just type in Margaret Sanger's letters on African Americans. I say use that search term because that's what will pull it up. They're referred to as Africans. And they said, we're going to pose as liberals. We're going to take control of these people institutionally. We're going to kill them. And they do. They kill half of them, 52% non-born. From 10% illegitimacy to 92% illegitimacy. They have destroyed the black community. And let me tell you something, they're going to do it to everybody's community. In fact, you look at every other community, that's exactly what they've duplicated. They started with the blacks because that was a group that they could target and isolate and control. They said, we're going to run the hookers and the drugs in your neighborhood. And then that's going to be our only economic way to move up. The globalists have it all figured out. They're engineers. And they hate humanity. And now they are saying, oh, people are so infertile now, the government will pay to have a designer baby for you, even with 3 parents. Look this up. But we're going to cut out any traits we say are bad, including aggression, including not trusting authority. You can type in the news articles. Anything I say, type it in, look it up. And you read this 15-page article, and it just goes on describing in nightmare detail the baby's crying, the blood, the 14-year-old cancer patient begging for food and water. And it goes on and on about the baby's hunger and thirst. It goes on. I have also seen children die in terrible thirst because fluids are withdrawn from them until they die. Doctors describing 14-year-old boy begging for water as his tongue shriveled to a black lump stuck to his mouth. I mean, it goes on and on and on. We'll be back. The globalists sell the general public on bioethics and to not get treatment in your life. But here's the description to Wesley Smith's book that he's basically serialized in the Wall Street Journal. When his teenage son, Christopher, brain damage in an auto accident, developed 106-degree fever following weeks of unconsciousness, John Campbell asked the attending physician for help. The doctor refused. Why bother? The boy's life was effectively over. Campbell refused to accept this verdict. He demanded treatment and threatened legal action. The doctor finally relented. With treatment, Christopher's temperature subsided almost immediately. Soon afterwards, he regained consciousness, and today he is learning to walk again. This story is one of many Wesley J. Smith recounts in his groundbreaking new book, Culture of Death. It's been out for 10 years now. Smith believes that American medicine is changing from a system based on the sanctity of human life to a stark utilitarian model, yeah, it's eugenics, in which he medically defenseless are seen as having not just a right to die, but a duty to die. Going behind the curtain of scenes of healthcare system, he shows how doctors withdraw desired care based on feudal care theory rather than providing it as required by the Hippocratic Oath. Well, it's been removed. And how bioethicists influence policy by considering questions such as whether organs may be harvested from the terminally ill and disabled. This is a passionate yet coolly reasoned book. Yeah, and he doesn't even get into really eugenics. I'm kind of the master researcher along with Aaron Dykes on that. It integrates in. And we either understand, folks, they're now killing people who have become paralyzed. They're saying, well, your quality of life's not too good, paralyzed, neck down. We're going to kill you. Now, if you're Christopher Reeves and got, $10 million in the bank, we're going to suck you dry. See, if you don't have money, they're going to kill you through this government-run healthcare system. And that's what's so sick. I'm not putting out rhetoric here to demonize Obamacare because I don't like Obama and I don't like the free phone and I'm just mad because he's black and all this baloney. And these people jumping up and down feeling like they've won because their guy's in. Mitt Romney was bad too, but Obama was clearly worse. That's why he was put in. And the fact that they can say, oh, there's a mandate now for all this just shows how they sell this fraud. I mean, look at this article by Wesley J. Smith in the Weekly Standard, 2004. Now they want to euthanize children. Paul Watson finds a bioethics journal, the biggest one this year, becomes big news, but it's all old news. It's been going on. It's getting worse. In the Netherlands, 31% of pediatricians have killed infants. A fifth of these killings were done without the consent of the parents. You hear that? Going Dutch has never been so horrible. You hear that? Because euthanasia is very Scandinavian, very Northern European. That's archived at Infowars.com. Now, where's Paul Watson's new article on this? It's up at Infowars.com, and it is so incredibly important. We'll punch that up from Infowars.com. Will sick babies be starved to death under Obamacare? Doctors describe horror of Britain's socialist healthcare system. And I called Watson early this morning. I worked with him some on this article. He focuses on England. This is already going on. It's not see, even my writers who are incredibly intelligent have a governor in their minds. Because I sat there for like 20 minutes on the phone with Paul at 7 a.m. this morning. And I said, after not sleeping all night, and I said, go check this out, go check that out. They're already killing babies like that here in the U.S. And then Paul writes an article. I'm not criticizing him. This is full spectrum analysis here. Saying, could it happen? See, a normal person, I can go give you, Paul, where they're already killing kids. People say Infowars.com exaggerates. People say PrisonPlanet.com exaggerates. That's kind of a fake meme. Sometimes we do by accident. There's hyperbole, but usually it's not. It's worse than we're telling you, okay? It's worse. It's worse. It's worse. Bill Gates, there's a video clip of Bill Gates saying, if we don't give a lady end-of-life coverage, we can hire 10 teachers. And the teachers all clap. Oh, good. They're being taught to be predators. Back Back in 2004, I had a chance to meet her at the Project Censored Awards in San Francisco. I was there getting second place for a report on the Patriot Act, withdrawing remaining rights from the Bill of Rights. And she's in our film, Martial Law, 911 Rise of the Police State. And she's been on the show, I don't know, 10 times or so over the years. She is former Congresswoman Cynthia Mckinney. We played the clips here before, but, you know, grilling Rumsfeld about sex trafficking with the Pentagon and defense contractors and DynCorp. And Rumsfeld saying they're allowed to do that. Just type in congressional hearing on child sex trafficking, and you'll see it on YouTube. And, boy, they went after her after that happened. Democratic Party as well. And she goes to war zones to cover what's happening. She has a lot of courage. And, you know, this is what the Democratic Party in the past has claimed they're about, fighting for the little guy, but they're all bought and paid for by the same people as the Republican leadership. And I was driving along in the car listening on a local affiliate here in Austin, Texas. I think it was Monday. And I heard Cynthia Mckinney on Captain Joyce Riley's show here on the GCN Radio Network, GCNlive.com. And I thought, man, it's time to try to get her on. Because last time I tried to get her on, she was out of the country doing reporting. But she joins us for the rest of the hour. And we've got some in-studio guests joining us as well. But, you know, she was talking about Barack Obama and why he's so dangerous, because he makes people that are traditionally anti-torture, anti-war, anti-police state just say, hey, I want N.D.A.A. I want troops on the streets. I want T.S.A. sticking their hands down our pants. I want banker bailouts because it's Obama. And we saw conservatives go to sleep under Bush because, well, he's a Republican, we're winning. It's the same thing when they're bought and paid for. So I wanted her to flesh that out, to talk about her trips to the Middle East, talk about her take on the ouster of a Gaddafi, and now in Syria, our government admitting they run al-Qaeda. I wanted to get her take on where she sees all this going and where she sees the future of America. Because let me tell you something. Cynthia Mckinney has more courage than any man I know. I mean, I've been invited to Iraq to cover things with the real press. I've been invited to the West Bank. I've been invited to these places. I've been invited, you know, to come be an observer by foreign governments, an official letterhead. I won't even get into that. And it's not that I'm physically afraid. It's that I'm comfortable here covering things, doing things, reaching millions a day. But I think that's a cop-out. It's just that it's just like some of the other guests we have on who were in Tripoli while it was under bombardment. People like Webster Tarpley, people like Wayne Madsen. And she just has incredible courage. And I know she's transformed, too, from 20 years ago, you know, kind of being more of a mainline Democrat to her awakening through the system from the inside. That's really what I admire above everything out there is people that really have courage and really tell it like it is. Now, I'm going to stop gushing for Cynthia Mckinney. That's why she's been so demonized, misrepresented in the press, is because the system is scared of this woman. And I guess she ought to count her lucky stars, because they used to just kill people like her. Now they just kill your character in the media, assassinate your character. But they sure tried to do that. But I know the real Cynthia Mckinney, and we ought to do a special piece just on the wars she's been through. Cynthia, great to have you with us, Congresswoman, a former Congresswoman. You know, you've heard my little intro here. I want to get into Obama first because he provides that illusion that's helping bring in this corporate world government right now.
You're absolutely right. And I remember watching a clip of Henry Kissinger saying that it was amazing the amount of goodwill that candidate Barack Obama had. And it is absolutely true that around the world, President Barack Obama still maintains goodwill, even as he is torturing, renditioning, killing, spending our money on war and even more war. And it's just amazing the amount of goodwill. And so what that really tells me is that people around the world were really waiting for U.S. voters to step up to the plate and do the right thing and elect someone who, first of all, would stick to his word and keep campaign promises, make a campaign that was really a campaign of, for, and by the people, but then also elect someone who was capable of being a global citizen, someone who felt responsibility for the impact of U.S. policy in other places around the world. Sadly, that is not the case with Barack Obama. And the talked about nomination of Ambassador Susan Rice to the Secretary of State position is just one more example of how the powers that be are able to take what ought to be something good and turn it into a travesty. This woman sat on top of U.S. regime change in Rwanda that resulted in 1 million people being killed. And this was a policy that she went along with.
And that State Department Memorandum 200, Henry Kissinger, 1973, continuing. We have that clip in a moment of Kissinger. We're going to play that, Congresswoman. But here's what's so incredible about this is that these facts are public, that Rwanda wasn't a disaster. It was engineered. All that's come out, and it's part of the policy of killing Africans deader than a hammer. And it's so incredible that as long as it's the liberals doing it, it's cute and funny. Here's Henry Kissinger right after Obama was elected saying he's going to bring in the New World Order. Here it is.
What do you think the most important thing is for Barack Obama? Obviously, you're here to talk about the anniversary for U.S.-China diplomatic relations, but if you had to say this is going to be the country or the conflict or the place that will define the Obama administration, what would it be?
The president-elect is coming into office at a moment when there are upheavals in many parts of the world simultaneously. You have India, Pakistan, you have the jihadist movement. So he can't really say there is one problem that is the most important one. But he can give a new impetus to American foreign policy, partly because the reception of him is so extraordinary around the world. I think his task will be to develop an overall strategy for America in this period when really a new world order can be created. It's a great opportunity. It isn't such a crisis.
Okay, again, that is on the stock market floor, so that's not the best version of it. We actually have a clip of it in Fall the Republic, breaking all that down with Henry Kissinger. But there it is. And it's just so incredible that people say, oh, you don't like Obama because you're a racist. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Cynthia Mckinney, what do you say to people that throw that around when people point out that Obama is just the other side of the same globalist coin?
Well, unfortunately, we still have a lot of people who buy into this Kissingerian myth about the goodwill. And I subscribe to the view of Glenn Ford of Black Agenda Report, who says that President Obama is the more effective evil, not the lesser of two evils or the lesser evil, but he's the more effective evil. And why is that? Because he is allowed to do the things that Bill Clinton, even or especially George W. Bush, would not be allowed to do. He's allowed to do the things that Romney couldn't even think about doing. And so now, for example, the tabling of the idea of $400 billion cuts in the social safety net. This is outrageous when there's no talk at all about trimming the Pentagon and cutting out all of these wars. Literally, as we speak, right now, the United States is bombing Somalia. There's no need for all of this.
African is invading everything, as we said in the Obama deception now 4 years ago. All of this is coming out. And what about Libya, where they put al-Qaeda in? They actually engage in ethnic cleansing of real Africans, people that belong there. And then now they're using the same al-Qaeda against Syria. It's incredible.
Yes. Yes, that's exactly what is happening. And I think the government of Syria announced that they had the bodies of over 150 foreign fighters. And we know that people from Libya have, with their weapons, gone into Syria. It's just a tragedy all around. This is a man-made tragedy. It's a human made tragedy. And it is something that if we exercise our political rights and stretch our political muscle, we can stop it. But I just am so, at this point, not confused, but just disappointed in the lack of outrage at the things that are happening and that our president and the Congress can get away with.
Well, it's like the bottom dropped out. The government openly arms al-Qaeda to take over 2 countries. They use al-Qaeda to attack inside Iran, staging terror attacks while saying give our rights up because of al-Qaeda. The government runs giant white slavery rings. People always email me saying, white people's? No, it means sex slavery, folks. I mean, which you've been a champion against. I want to get into that. It's so crazy. And then I had a young woman cutting my hair this weekend, and she was sitting there saying, yeah, I want to join the UN to fight sex trafficking, and it's the UN running it. I mean, it's just the level of ignorance, like the bottom's falling out. Former Congresswoman Cynthia Mckinney's our guest. We've got her for the rest of the hour. Stay with us. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, just as I began to think here, what having Cynthia McKinney on and why I'm saying she's such a champion, if you type in McKinney Grills Rumsfeld, you'll find a clip we grabbed off C-SPAN. I don't know, was it back in 2007 or so? And then YouTube kept pulling it down, but people made copies of it. And it's McKinney Grills Rumsfeld. And in 9 minutes, she brings up the child kidnapping rings and stuff. And Rumsfeld says, well, DynCorp is just allowed to do that. I mean, that's what's incredible about this. I'm going to play that later. But while she was talking, it was Democratic operatives that basically helped push her out of the Congress. I mean, they have gone after her like nothing I've ever seen. And Hank Johnson's the guy that says islands capsize. That's the guy they put in. A new article at prisonplanet.com and Infowars.com, and it's got the clips of him talking. Democratic rep wants to amend Constitution to deny free speech, Kurt Nimmo. So literally, I wasn't going to bring up this guy who they used to get her out of Congress that says islands capsize. They're floating, you understand, according to him. That's who the globalists found to get rid of this incredibly smart lady, smart as they come. They put this guy in who now is calling to restrict free speech. I mean, he literally is like a cartoon character. Cynthia, I think it's time for you to run for Congress again.
Well, you know, I get that, and I this last little thing that you make me speechless all the time, and no one is ever able to do that. But yes, I'm working on my PhD right now, and when I finish, I think I might just do that because, and actually, I'll be finished very soon. So just in time for 2014. Conveniently enough.
Tell us about this guy that the neocons got behind to run against you because you kept exposing him.
Well, the only thing I can say is that it's really pathetic. You know, the people of the 4th District have not been served at all since I left. And we've got these outrageous statements that have been made. But when I say not served at all, I mean, people don't even see him. And maybe that's a good thing, because then they are not reminded of the complete, person that they have there who really is not the brightest pole on the block. But what he was bright enough to do was to say yes when the Democrats approached him. Apparently, it was Rahm Emanuel who did so. And gave him the deal. And then he came to me and said, well, you know, it's just business. It's nothing personal.
Yeah, well, let's play the guy that thinks islands are floating. And he said this wasn't a joke. Here is the gentleman now saying, get rid of our free speech. Here it is.
Yeah, this is
Oh, no.
guys, that's not a serious clip. Hit pause. Hit pause. We're going to have to get the long one, find the spot where he says the island's floating, because or the computer's messing up. We've got to... That clip's been saved many times, so we want to get a proper clip during the break, and we'll play it. Everybody knows about him saying that, you know, islands could capsize if we put too many military bases on it, and I think the computer was having a problem there. But, Cynthia, I mean, it's just incredible the lengths they go to go after you.
Well, it was both the Democrats and the Republicans, and it was also the pro-Israel lobby, which, of course, no one wants to talk about. But when we have Operation Pillar of Cloud being supported by 535 members of Congress, as we just saw the most recent Israeli bombardment of Gaza. And I was prepared to go back to Gaza as well, but they had the ceasefire, and so then, of course, there was no need to go in underneath the bombing. But I was told by people in Gaza that it was a 24-hour, around-the-clock bombardment. And there really wasn't very much left to bomb except the people from Operation Cast Lead. So now what is this all leading up to? And I would have to say, with the news reports now being that President Obama is determined to support more money, to donate more money to Israel for their dome missile defense system. And there's also some building 911 that is a mysterious construction that's also being reported in Israel. Now, I have Israelis who are telling me that Israel is actually building a series of bunkers. And maybe that's what this is. I have no idea.
Stay there, and we do have the full clip of him on Guam floating. We'll get it more into Obama, more into your trips to the Middle East. Straight ahead with Cynthia Mckinney. Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Central, we're here live. Back Sundays, 4 to 6 p.m. live. I'll be live this Sunday. Occasionally we have best of shows or recorded shows. I'll be live this Sunday, 4 to 6 p.m. Central. Also, InfoWars Nightly News, 7 o'clock every night Central. Former Congresswoman Cynthia Mckinney, demonized, taken out of context, giant media operations against her. We're going to play a clip of why coming up when she exposed Rumsfeld. There's like an hour of it, but there's short clips online. McKinney grills Rumsfeld, where they admit DynCorp was running giant child kidnapping rings. That's who runs the major CPS contracting here in the U.S. They're the biggest single contractor as well. And they were put in the penalty box on Bosnian contracts for 1 year. That was their punishment. And they had the director of the Pentagon Budget Office, Dr. Chu, explain it all. And they are scared of her. And I'm telling you, she's got angels around her. She'd be dead. And she's here with us now, but we were having a computer glitch earlier. That's why I was repeating the clip. That happens sometimes, every once in a while. Crew's doing a great job. Here is that clip of that congressperson, before we go back to her, that replaced her, that the Democrats ran against her. Not Republicans have run people against Ron Paul in his own district. Democrats hate the idea of the First Amendment does not explicitly restrict the right of corporations to free speech. In other words, to address this perceived flaw, Representative Hank Johnson, a Georgia Democrat, has proposed amending the Constitution. We need a constitutional amendment to allow the legislature to control the so-called free speech rights of corporations, but that would then lead on to individuals. And it breaks all of that down. This guy's a total puppet. Anything he's pushing, you know, is bad. Let's play that clip of him saying islands are floating. Here it is.
Well, this is a island that at its widest level is, 12 miles from shore to shore, and at its smallest level, or smallest location, it's 7 miles between one shore and the other. Is that correct?
I don't have the exact dimensions, but to your point, sir, I think Guam is a small island.
Very small island, and about 24 miles, if I recall, long. So 24 miles long, about 7 miles wide at the least widest, place on the island and about 12 miles wide on the widest part of the island. And I don't know how many square miles that is. Do you happen to know?
I don't have that figure with me, sir. I can certainly supply it to you if you'd like.
Yeah, my fear is that the whole island will become so overly populated that it will tip over and capsize.
We don't anticipate that. The Guam population, I think, currently about 175,000, and again, with 8,000
Okay, that's
Marines and
enough.
their
He goes on to
families,
talk
it's an
more about
addition of
capsizing. And Congresswoman, I apologize for even going back to that clip. I just want to point out, this is who the Democrats wanted to replace you with, because you've been critical of some of the things the Israelis are doing. And Ron Paul, in his farewell address, he said, why is AIPAC? Why will no one be able to criticize AIPAC or they come after you? I mean, I've not even been overly critical of Israel, and I've had AIPAC lobby come after me. I mean, you've got to really, just toe the line or they come after you.
Yes, it's true. And actually, in my schoolwork, which is the PhD is in leadership and change, and clearly our country needs both. But I'm focusing on targeted assassination, and I'm going back to the most complete and thorough documentation that we have of this particular phenomenon, or policy rather, and that is during the COINTELPRO, the days of the counterintelligence program. Now, what makes this an important issue for us to understand thoroughly is that now today we have a president who is claiming the right of targeted assassination, not just of foreign enemies, but of U.S. citizens on U.S. soil. This is such a grand leap into the stratosphere, or some of us would say the twilight zone, that we have got to understand. If we're going to dissent, we've got to really understand the ways in which now this playing field has been substantively changed by legislation and by the policies and practices that allow this kind of a thing of targeted assassination to take place with impunity.
Well, take the N.D.A.A. Now they want to expand it to allow full military operation, not just have the military disappear us. And now the new Army manual, that I can pull the number up for listeners, says re-education camps, that they'll put political dissidents, quote, in re-education camps. They're even using the authoritarian name, Cynthia. And again, former Congresswoman Cynthia Mckinney.
Oh, you better call me Cynthia.
but I mean, it's amazing that it's like open authoritarianism.
Absolutely. But you see, these are plans that were drawn up back during the time of the 60s. And that's why the church committee reports are invaluable for not only academicians and, historians, but also invaluable for people who want to dissent and to lead change today. Because Operation Chaos, Operation Garden Plot, these are all, if I were to say the things that are written in these documents, people would say, oh, she's this, she's that, call me all kinds of denigrating names. But it's there, and it's online, and it's under the church committee reports. It's
declassified. Tell people some of the stuff that's in there.
Well, they go into great lengths. They do in fact, they do a case study on the targeting of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And they did everything from the media, which they said that the United States CIA had relationships, and imagine that in the era of Pentagon perception management, that this is even multiplied now, but that they had relationships with publishing houses, journalists, entire media organs, foundations.
Operation Mockingbird.
In fact, every aspect of life. They say in the church committee reports that thousands of academicians, thousands of professors were on the CIA payroll, one way or the other. They were actively on the payroll, or they had projects that were financed.
And now it's literally, no exaggeration, 20, 30 times worse. Jesse Ventura, his first week as governor, they said, we want to call you down to the bottom of the Capitol. And there was 23 CIA people there basically telling him, we're watching you here locally. And he said, well, it's illegal for you to be operating domestically. And now tens of billions a year are spent in messages in TV, in the sitcoms and dramas. And what are they? Anti-family, anti-freedom, anti-gun. All of this, we are being bombarded with just absolute destructive messages here. And
That's right. In the 1999 trial that was conducted by William Pepper, who represented the King family, there was expert testimony given that said that approximately 30% of the CIA budget at that time was in this idea of, you know, the Grand Wurlitzer shaping public opinion. Imagine what it is now. Imagine. So here we have the penetration of intelligence, and this is all cataloged in the church committee reports, from churches, domestically as well as international, universities, foundations, media and publishing houses. Every aspect of our life had been penetrated one way or another by the intelligence services of the United States. And this is back in the 1970s. Now, of course, back then, Frank Church, Senator Church, who led one part of the investigation, and Otis Pike led another part of the investigation on the House side, Frank Church said that these activities that ranged from targeted assassination through neutralization of people who dissent, like members of American Indian Movement, members of the Black Panther Party, members of the Puerto Rican Independence Movement, which are the three organizations that I'm writing about right now, and right through to the kinds of Jerry Rubin wrote an open letter that they went through his bank account. They knew how much he made every time he took to the stage and made a speech. They knew everything about Jerry Rubin. And at that time, it was illegal and un-American, according to Senator Church.
And now it is many times worse. But here is the silver lining. People in the FBI, people in the CIA, that was mainly race-based then, and it still is some to a certain extent today. But now it's purely cold-blooded, globalist, corporate banking cartel that took over with the Federal Reserve, but now is fully dissolved in the U.S. People inside the police, the military, and other areas, because I talked to them, but we're seeing the evidence, they are now demoralized, but not in a bad way. They now get it because of countless people's work, like myself, you, Ron Paul, and others, and they understand. They're not buying the old stories of why they tell them to go out and do evil stuff. They now are getting this. So I think that's really the battle, is over the heart and soul, because now Congress is doing whatever they're told. They're following NATO, you know, being told NATO gives our military orders. So now it's gotten so bad. I mean, I'm starting to see a real awakening. Are you seeing that?
I absolutely am. And that's why I've been working really hard. And I think I'm seeing the dividends of this work. But I've been reaching out because at one point, it became clear to me that it's not black or white. It's not a racial thing anymore. They were just practicing on us, and now they've expanded to the larger community. And so the old paradigms, the old political paradigm, left, right, you know, communist or whatever, all of that is no longer relevant. It's wrong versus right.
Yep, that's it.
That's right. And
it's tyranny versus liberty, and both parties are bought and paid for by the same foreign banks, and they brag in the news they've conquered us.
That's why I've been reaching out to Oath Keepers, and I've reached out to this young man. We've been trying to connect Dan Johnson, who is leader of these individuals who have decided that they're going to draw a line in the sand on N.D.A.A. And what I want to do is I want to partner with all of the people of this country who want to draw a line in the sand. I'm ready.
It is coming down to that when they say, yeah, we'll torture you. Yeah, we're spying on you without warrants. Yeah, we're going to take your pension funds and give it in a banker bailout. It is so cold-blooded. Now, I want to get into white slavery rings. That means sex trafficking for new listeners out there and what you have exposed. The UN estimates that in just the last decade, over 2 million people were trafficked out of Europe alone, millions out of the Middle East, Africa. This is a giant industry. And who runs it? The big defense contractors. I want to play just a few minutes of you talking right to Donald Rumsfeld and the Pentagon brass in front of you. Talk about guts. Here's a short clip of that. Of Congresswoman Cynthia Mckinney talking to folks. It's not ready. We called for it at the start of the last hour. I mean, we got it queued up. Start telling folks about that, and then we'll play the clip.
Well, I would also just like to mention there's another clip of me with Chertoff. And Chertoff, as every time I'm going to the airport today, and every time you go through an airport, you know, I think about the Chertoff machines that make him very wealthy. So this idea of us challenging, like the young people of We Are Change and like Luke Rutkowski, I mean, there are some young people who have decided that they're just going to do what Mario Savio said, and that is put their entire bodies against the gears and the levers and the wheels of the machine. And they're saying to the owners, you know, if you don't stop it, we're going to stop it, which is really beautiful. You're right. There is an awakening. And I'm just happy to be able to see this awakening now, but I want to see more as well.
Wow. Yeah, we do have that clip actually queued up. And again, if anybody wants to watch it in full, just type in Cynthia Mckinney grills Donald Rumsfeld. Here is that clip of her in Congress. What year was this when you did this?
That was 2006.
2006. And here's just part of it. Here's part of that hearing.
I thank the gentleman, the gentlelady from Georgia, Ms. McKinney.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, I watched President Bush deliver a moving speech at the United Nations in September 2003, in which he mentioned the crisis of the sex trade. The president called for the punishment of those involved in this horrible business. But at the very moment of that speech, DynCorp was exposed for having been involved in the buying and selling of young women and children. While all of this was going on, DynCorp kept the Pentagon contract to administer the smallpox and anthrax vaccines and is now working on a plague vaccine through the Joint Vaccine Acquisition Program. Mr. Secretary, is it policy of the U.S. government to reward companies that traffic in women and little girls? That's my first question. My second question, Mr. Secretary, according to the Comptroller General of the United States, there are serious financial management problems at the Pentagon, to which Mr. Cooper alluded. Fiscal year 1999, 2.3 trillion missing. Fiscal year 2000, 1.1 trillion missing. And DOD is the #1 reason why the government can't balance its checkbook. The Pentagon has claimed year after year that the reason it can't account for the money is because its computers don't communicate with each other. My second question, Mr. Secretary, is who has the contracts today to make those systems communicate with each other? How long have they had those contracts? And how much have the taxpayers paid for them? Finally, Mr. Secretary, after the last hearing, I thought that my office was promised a written response to my question regarding the 4 war games on September 11th. I have not yet received that response, but would like for you to respond to the questions that I've put to you today, and then I do expect the written response to my previous question, hopefully by the end of the week.
Thank you, Representative. First, the answer to your first question is no, absolutely not. The policy of the United States government is clear, unambiguous, and opposed to the activities that you described. The second question.
Well, how do you explain the fact that DynCorp and its successor companies have received and continue to receive government contracts?
I would have to go and find the facts, but there are laws and rules and regulations with respect to government contracts, and there are times that corporations do things they should not do, in which case they tend to be suspended for some period. There are times then that under the laws and the rules and regulations passed by the Congress and implemented by the executive branch, that corporations can get off of out of the penalty box, if you will, and be permitted to engage in contracts with the government. They're not generally not barred in perpetuity.
This company was never in the penalty box. If you could proceed to my second question, please.
The second question, I've forgotten what the second question was.
I think Ms. Jonas knows it.
Okay, that's enough. And again, there's hours of this, but that's why they hate her. That's 2006. That's why they've gone after her. We've got 10 minutes left here, a little bit less, former Congresswoman Cynthia Mckinney. I think you need to be back in Congress, obviously, and I hope you do run again. And I hope the electronic voting machines don't keep you out. Because, I mean, you've got to be able to beat a guy that says islands are floating around and everything else. But, I mean, again, they always talk about women being grabbed. If you go read the actual reports, as you know, this sex slavery is little kids. Some of them in snuff films. Saudi Arabia, Israel, a bunch of other Asian countries. That's where these kids are going. And it's just left alone. And there's even PBS documentaries, and then it's this cause celeb to talk about sex slavery, but they're always busting some low-level pimp that's running a few prostitutes, you know, that's bad enough that they're never talking about the real deal, I mean, I could pull up UN murdering children and show photos right now. I don't want to show it on TV, but go ahead, Congresswoman.
Well, I was just going to say that you're absolutely right. And if you recall, there was the scandal really in Haiti of missionaries that were taking young Haitian kids, and the Haitian government caught them before they were able to escape over into the Dominican Republic. But we've had a situation that was actually adjudicated in the courts with another situation of Haitian, gentleman, well, not really a gentleman, but a person going down to Haiti and stealing kids and bringing them back up to the United States. So this is really a problem, and you're right, it's an international problem, and our government ought to really stand up against it.
Wow, I'm just speechless listening to you. And it's amazing how they'll take the crimes they're committing and then they'll create the opposition to the sex slavery, and then they'll lead it so they can control the debate and whitewash it.
Absolutely. And I guess you call that controlled opposition. And what we have to be able to do, those of us who view ourselves on the outside of the political system and are trying to impact it, what we have to be able to do is to identify the gatekeepers, identify the controlled opposition, and identify those who have a kind of spirit and a kind of heart that will allow us to penetrate all of the obstacles that are put forward against us. And it is possible for us to do that. I remember a quote from Bobby Kennedy, who said that a million ripples joined together can wash down the mightiest walls of oppression. And I believe that.
I agree with you. Look, it's simple in history, and I know you're very well read and studied and have lived a lot as well. But when you give into corruption, the corrupt don't understand if they're just stealing money or they're just, you know, doing something that's seen as mid-level, that then they can't say no to the next corrupt person who's a little more corrupt than them. Right. And then it's a little more corrupt and a little more corrupt. And pretty soon the UN is delivering kids, 3-year-old toddlers, to a snuff film production company in Italy where they rape them and blow their heads off. I mean, and that's a real case I just mentioned that came out on Italian television, and they fired the Italian producers, even though it was confirmed, because the snuff films were meant for distribution in California.
Wow.
I mean, folks, for CIA, FBI, all of you on your petty power trips, all of you that buy your propaganda, you're signed on to a global corporate combine that blows the heads off of 3-year-olds, okay? I mean, you know, that smart bombs whole families to kill one guy. We have signed on to evil collectively, and we've got to say, whoa, put the brakes on, no more. And that's what's so sick about Obama, is the Obama supporters get this crazy look in their eye and go, you're just racist, you're just mad he won. I'm like, Romney's bad too. But Obama is the more effective evil. Don't you get it's all manufactured? And they just smile at me and say, shut up, racist. And I'm just like, no. Don't you understand? And I can't get through to people. They just won't listen.
It is all manufactured. And that's why people couldn't believe when they would ask me, you know, as if I was a part of this great spectator sport. You know, are you pulling for, you know, Romney? I know you really want Obama to win, but the bottom line is that the drones are flying no matter who won. The bombs are dropping no matter who won. And the policy will continue until we, the people, and this is what I keep saying over and over again, and that's why I want so much to redraw the political boundaries. We have to join together, washing down all of those expected divisions. So, for example, when I came back from Cape Town, South Africa, and had this so-called F.A.A. threat against me.
Hey, I tell you what, can you do 5 more minutes with us to tell that story about the Middle East? Okay, former Congresswoman Cynthia Mckinney, 1-minute break. We're coming right back to her. And we got in-studio guests coming up on the 10th Amendment and how to restore the Republic, as well as the 9th Amendment and the First Amendment. It's all coming up. Washington has been seized by foreign banks. What are we going to do about it? Final segment with Congresswoman Cynthia Mckinney right now. You have gone to these war zones to really see firsthand what's happening, and you were getting into how the system tries to imply that you're somehow a bad person. Now they're having no fly list, no gun buy list outside of law. Please continue for the 5 minutes we've got.
Okay, I'll just make it brief, and I can conclude in one sentence, basically, and say that it really is time for us to come together and say no to the tyranny that is about to engulf all of us. And so it doesn't really matter our gender, our color, our ethnicity, our religion, our accent. I speak with a Southern accent. None of that matters anymore. It all depends now on whether or not we believe in freedom and liberty, we believe in the Bill of Rights, the U.S. Constitution, or we're going to be run over by the people who don't.
But I want to get back to the harassment you've gone under for going to foreign countries.
The harassment. Oh, yes. I got an FBI a call when I came back from Cape Town, South Africa, as a part of the Bertrand Russell Tribunal on Palestine. And I came back and basically the FBI called and said that I had a terrorist threat that had been delivered against me, Eric Holder, and President Obama. And it was delivered by some Georgia hillbillies. And those people aren't concerned about me. But you see, it was all to and they blew it up really big. But that's just to create more strife. I know that those people in North Georgia weren't concerned about me. And in fact, if I were to query them, they are concerned about the same things I'm concerned about, which is those people who were making the call to me, offering their protection. I feel safer with the people than I did with FBI offer of protection. That's for sure.
So you're saying it was a way to threaten you?
Absolutely. And of course, there's a soft repression. One of the aspects of what I'm studying now is repression and the tools that are used by government.
Yeah, they call it security, but you're really in a prison. Let's expand on this. What is the best website for people to visit and find your information?
Oh, my goodness. People tell me all the time. They can go to allthingscynthiamckinney.com. And there is not the best website. I apologize. But if you hit the talk back and send a message directly to me, then I will answer. I answer all of the messages that come to me. So I encourage people to communicate with me.
Sure. Well, they use the name of security and safety and public safety as a prison. That's how the Chinese emperors got walled off and the women's feet were bound and they couldn't cut their fingernails because you're such a god. You can't feed yourself or walk. And that's how the priest class took over and became the real emperors. And it's the same thing, the T.S.A. What's your take on the T.S.A.?
It's a bunch of bunk. And I mean, you know, if you look at the business of the T.S.A., first of all of those machines, I opt out all of the time. And we did get a modest victory with the, you know, saying, okay, we can film, because that was your initiative, I believe, opt out and film. And I always opt out. Every morning I wake up, I ask myself, what can I do to resist today? And when I'm traveling, I opt out. That's one of the little, you know, grains of sand that I can put, the little friction that I can cause.
Exactly. T.S.A. is literal slave training.
And also, absolutely. And also the other thing is the responsibility of government to tell us what's going on with Fukushima. We've got something going on at San Onofre nuclear power plant out in California. What is it? What's going on with the nuclear plant in New Jersey? There's so much. There's so many issues out there.
Everything's degenerating. Will you promise to come back soon and we'll talk about that?
Yes, I will.
Wow, what an amazing lady. Thank you so much. I'll say bye to you during the break. Guest coming in studio. There is so much incredible news out there. They're talking about getting rid of dollar bills. They've devalued the currency so much. We've also got the Republicans working with the Democrats to raise taxes to pay more corporate welfare to foreign banks. That's where most of it goes. We've got Democratic representative amend the Constitution to allow restrictions on freedom of speech. That's CBS News. The same Democratic congressman that says that islands float, Hank Johnson, who replaced Congresswoman Cynthia Mckinney, who just joined us. I mean, that guy is the definition of a Fruit Loop. I mean, it's just, he's actually hilarious, though. He'd be great to have over to a dinner party, I'm going to be honest with you. Continuing, there is just so much news coming out. Up at drudgereport.com, there's a story, couple indicted for disturbing graphic videos of puppies, kittens tortured and killed. That's a real popular thing the last few years with trendies. Because they're so decadent, people are getting into evil as a form of nihilism. And I covered earlier, mainstream news admitting that under Obamacare, they're going to take sick children and dehydrate them and kill them. It's murder. They don't give the Hippocratic Oath anymore. Paul Watson has an article up at Infowars.com on that. They're even saying, if you don't want your, up to age 3, if you don't want your kids, even if they're healthy, you can just kill them. So, but it's liberal, so it's okay. As long as it's called liberal. You know, Margaret Sanger loved Hitler, but she was liberal, so it was okay. Now, before we go to our guests, we've got one via Skype and then one here in studio. Amazing filmmaker. I'm very proud of the fact this was produced right here in Texas. Nullification, the Rightful Remedy with Stuart Rhodes, Deborah Medina, and so many others in it. Tom Woods, very professionally done, available at InfoWarsStore.com. And, of course, you know I've had my big call. Well, I'll get into that in a moment as we introduce them here. But this, I print a little over 100,000 of InfoWars magazine. This is the 4th issue, the December issue. And we put around 70,000 of these on the street in Austin and now some in San Antonio at over 1,500 locations up and down the I-35 corridor and other areas. And that's a lot of them. It's 60 pages, color glossy, and the information is off the charts. We sell these at cost because this is an outreach system. And on the cover, it shows Obama sitting on top of an American flag, and it says, "This man wants your guns." And it gets into just so many subjects. And boy, you can tell I've had 4 issues. The first issue sold out in 2 days. And the ones that we held back, the 40,000 or so, I put out 60,000 on the street then and held back 40,000. It sold out in 2 days, less than 2 days. 30-something thousand. We held back some for subscriptions, obviously. This one sold out in less than a day, and so we hadn't trucked, because these just came in Wednesday night. They came in on the truck from the big printer. We get these printed in Ohio. It's the best paper and the best deal we could find, so we truck it in. And the magazines came in, and we were going to put 70,000 on the street. We're putting 60,000 on the street because these things sold out. So I just pulled back 10,000 more that we won't be putting on the street so you can get them. People are buying them in bulk in groups of 10 up to 100 because it covers the attack on the Second Amendment. It covers states' rights. It has Ron Paul's entire farewell address exposing the globalists that's so powerful. The text of that with a full-color poster in there. And that's the issue is, wow, the first issue sold out because it was all about economic collapse by design. The other 2 didn't sell out. We still have some of those left. And this one sold out even quicker. So it kind of gives you a gauge of what people are concerned about. But this man wants your guns. This is a great way to wake people up, give a gift subscription. When the ones in bulk and 10 packs up to 100 sell out, we're holding back like 4,000 for new subscriptions. We just mailed out everybody's subscription in the last 2 days for the December issue. So the only way you'll be able to get it is if you get a yearly subscription. If you don't order it in bulk right now at InfoWarsStore.com or call 888-253-3139. And it's basically a short color book with incredible graphics and the whole Ron Paul speech that you can give to people with short attention spans with cartoons and graphics to wake them up. This is a weapon, and I've now decided every issue of the magazine will also get an InfoWars bumper sticker. Can't afford to do the Citizen Rule books because we lose too much money. I'm also going to do something at cost. I'm ordering 100,000 bumper stickers, and we're going to mail them, shipping included, free to whoever wants them in groups of 500. that'll get the word out. And if that side issue. Okay, I'm done ranting. I just haven't plugged anything yet in 2 hours and 10 minutes of radio. So going into the 3rd hour here, I'm plugging some stuff. We've also got Pro Pure water filters, 15% off, running that till December 15th. The gravity-fed filters I use, nobody's got a deal like that. InfoWarsStore.com. We're not like the government that takes your money and then uses it against you in propaganda forcibly with taxes. We're like, hey, we got great books, videos, things we like. And with the Pro Pure, we do make money off that. That's the kind of stuff that funds us. And then we also, again, sell Nullification, the Rightful Remedy. Okay, enough of me ranting and raving here today. Jason Rink is one of the filmmakers who helped make the documentary film Nullification. And you know, I called 2 weeks ago, and it made international headlines. I called 2 weeks ago for the states to secede, but not to secede to create a new confederacy or something else, to secede from the New World Order occupied federal government where the foreign banks brag to shareholders they've conquered us and say, there's no way we're going to take the whole economy, we're only going to grow, we're going to take everything they got, Gen 21. So Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan brag about that. I'm saying go through the state legislatures, whatever you want, also fight in Congress at that level, from every level, to restore the republic by the states pointing out the federal government's now out of control and illegitimate. When the T.S.A. tells the Congress they're not under their oversight, when Congress is told 3 separate hearings by the Joint Chiefs and the chairman that NATO commands our military now and that we don't have to go to Congress, that's an illegitimate federal government right there. And so that's my basic idea that Lou Rockwell's agreed with, Edwin Vieira, Ron Paul, one of Ron Paul's chief advisors, as well as Bruce Fine, constitutional lawyer. So we now need to get this rolling. It's not my idea. I'm simply going, hey, this says make whatever government we want. Well, we make America back. We re-upload Bill of Rights, Constitution, Declaration of Independence, and we have the states do it. And just the focus of that in the media will bring the globalists to their knees. And Nullification shows the different remedies as well along those lines. So joining us here in studio is Jason Rink and Tom Woods, libertarian bestselling author, also advisor to Ron Paul, joins us, and we're very, very excited. TomWoods.com. is the site there. Nullification, available at InfoWarsStore.com. Again, Evil Free Market, Evil Free Association. Oh, it's so dirty. And but taking your money at gunpoint and using it against you, that's loving and moral. JasonRink.com. Jason Rink, we've only got like 3 or 4 minutes before we go to break, and we're with you guys for the rest of the hour. But what do you think of what I've said? What do you think of the state of the republic and where it's going? Have the choices between tyranny and liberty ever been clearer? Then we're going to go to break and come back and give Tom Woods the floor for that segment. Jason, good to have you here with us.
Oh, glad to be here. And, you know, all we're really saying is this radical idea that maybe the Founding Fathers didn't fight a revolution, write a constitution, enumerate certain powers, and then hand that document over to the federal government and say, okay, now go limit yourself. The states no longer have any say into whether or not the federal government has expanded past those enumerated powers. And, you know, the 10th Amendment was put in the Constitution for a reason, which said you can go this far and no further. And so I think the notion that this is a radical idea, that the states can stand up and be this check on federal power, even when the Supreme Court decides and says, oh, Obamacare is constitutional, even when the Supreme Court says states can't pass medical marijuana laws in opposition to, you know, federal unconstitutional war on drugs. You know, this is what's happening, and we're really seeing a watershed happening across the country, you know, with these secession talks and people really saying, look, what do? We don't have any way to petition our federal government anymore. We've got to look to the states and to the people to preserve liberty.
That's it. And or why even have states? Why even have families? Why? I mean, the government is not God. Tom Woods, we're going to break here in a moment, but for a few minutes here, lay out your view. I haven't asked you yet. If you saw the reports I put out that gained so much traction, Ron Paul's responded saying there's nothing more, you know, American than secession. What's your take on my basic cry that we need to get serious about this just to start the real negotiation with the foreign banks that have hijacked the country, because they've fully taken over Washington. We need to use the states as the check they were designed to be right now.
Well, I agree with your point that what's the point of having states if they don't do anything? If they're not meant to be to exist for the administrative convenience of the central government. The states created the central government. Now, I don't know if I necessarily want to run through the same steps that got us where we are now. I mean, obviously there was a problem with the Constitution, or we wouldn't be in this situation. And people may say, well, that's because they're not interpreting the Constitution correctly. Well, obviously there aren't strong enough safeguards against that, or we wouldn't be in this situation.
And that's what Thomas Jefferson said.
That's exactly what he said. You have to allow the states too to have some voice in deciding what's constitutional. And that's a big no-no. You're not going to be taught that in an American school, but if you don't understand that point, the federal government is just going to keep interpreting the Constitution in these more and more bizarre ways to justify itself. So I say the more we can talk about forbidden topics like nullification and secession and break through this philosophical barrier, the better.
You're absolutely right. And when we come back, I want to look at the Constitution Bill of Rights with both you gentlemen, break down what's in the film Nullification, the Rightful Remedy, because again, we're not even talking about secession from the federal government. I mean, it's run by the private Federal Reserve for all intents and purposes. They admit that on CNBC. So, I mean, I think we should hammer that, as Ron Paul did in his farewell address. I want to get both your take on that as well. Coming up, we'll look at Obamacare and so much more. The film, with so many amazing speakers, Nullification, the Rightful Remedy, a documentary film. This is something every state representative, every member of Congress sees. Buy them and give them to your representative and air them on Access Television. Get them out to everybody. Yeah, the federal government wants another kiss. They want VAT. They want carbon taxes to pay the bankers who we've signed on to their derivatives. We either get rid of the Federal Reserve or they will gut this country under Agenda 21. They make you poor while they consolidate your wealth. Ultra-rich, anti-free market. I've seen J.P. Morgan Chase ads where they say they basically bring you Thanksgiving. They made America strong. Look at this. Study. American households hit 43-year low in net worth. CBS News. And I've had Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, former Reagan economist, head of the Treasury and Policy, #2 there, saying it's worse than that. This is amazing. Going back to author Tom Woods, who's in the film, a documentary film Nullification. We have the filmmaker right here, Jason Rink, will probably be on the Nightly News with us tonight as well. And I'm going to go into 4th hour overdrive the day to premiere of this expose on J.P. Morgan, since they've put out this propaganda. Tom, front and center on your radar, what do you think the Obama election means, and why do you think we're seeing a supercharged call for secession in all 50 states?
Well, the Obama election doesn't mean all that much more than what the Romney election would have meant. It's probably a mildly smaller chance of foreign policy bellicosity, I guess, but otherwise more or less more of the same. But I'll tell you, Alex, what encouraged me was the fact that we did see these secession petitions. Now, we have to bear in mind that all the same, the constituency for secession right now is still very, very small. But the fact is, in the past, when somebody's been elected that people haven't liked, very rarely have they talked about secession. I mean, you can gripe, you can write articles, but the idea that people would use the word secession when our overlords have tried to make this word completely toxic in our lexicon, that to me is very significant. So I like the idea of talking about forbidden topics and getting people just to think in different ways. Like, for example, suppose as Jefferson envisioned might happen, the United States devolved into 3 separate units or something. Like the Union is not an end in itself. The Union is a means to an end. And if it's better to have 3, then maybe we have 3. Suppose we had 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 states instead of 1. Would every single one of them have this crazy foreign policy? Would every single one of them have intervened in World War I, one of the worst decisions of the whole 20th century? In other words, maybe life would actually be better if we had some kind of competition among these people instead of having one giant blob governing 315 million people. Why is that so unthinkable?
Especially when that autocratic, authoritarian, out-of-control blob is openly run by foreign lobbyists and megabanks. I mean, have you seen the clips on CNBC and all over the news where they say there is a technocratic world government run by foreign banks and they know best and we're under them now? And yes, they're appointing leaders of the European nations. And yes, you're going to live in 220 square foot houses so you can pay all your money to them. And I mean, it's like, well, this really sounds great.
Well, for people who still believe in what their 3rd grade civics textbook taught them about how a bill becomes a law and legislators are there just to try to make sure that the public good is brought about and the will of the people is instantiated in the government. I mean, this is so utterly at odds with what actually goes on. And this is another reason that I'm happy to see that the government school monopoly is being broken, because maybe people might actually be able to learn something that corresponds to reality.
That's right. Again, Tom Woods, our guest. Long segment coming up. And the 3 minutes we've got left in this segment, Jason Rink, I like to model other people that have been successful fighting the globalist. You know, 4 people out there that are thinking, what can I do? Tell us briefly about yourself and how you organize and got all these great men and women together to make Nullification such a first-rate film.
Well, you know, I was inspired by Tom's book, Nullification. I mean, that's really what articulated so many of these arguments to me in the first place. And then I partnered with the 10th Amendment Center out in California, Michael Bolden out there, who's been on the show, just doing a great job of being really the tip of the spear of states' rights and 10th Amendment issues. And so what ended up happening is I have a nonprofit called the Foundation for a Free Society that I'm the executive director of. We helped co-sponsor the Nullify Now tour. There were stops in Fort Worth and in Austin, where we went all across the country, had hundreds of people coming out to hear all of these speakers. And
big things have small beginnings.
Yeah, absolutely. It started out just as one stop. We had over a dozen cities we went to. We decided to make the movie in the middle of the tour. We said, wait a minute, we've got to get this out there. And
so now you go from reaching thousands to reaching hundreds of thousands to reaching millions.
Absolutely. And really, it's just that it's a 72-minute film. We wanted to make it short so that people could learn all they needed to know so that a legislator might watch it and be converted. We wanted to give a tool in the battle to teach people what decentralized government is, what federalism's all about, and that we still have the power.
Jason Rink, Tom Woods are our guest. I'm Alex Jones, your host. Our home base is Infowars.com. We come back, I'll ask Tom Woods about that. I mean, his actions, your actions, Ron Paul's. That's why we're building this momentum. We need to push it to the next level. Stay with us. Our guests are leaving us at the end of the hour. I will go into the 4th hour that many stations do carry. It's not always live. A lot of times it's the 1st hour we broadcast. Because I've got to do my review of World War Z. People kept saying, why aren't you reviewing this? Well, I did go do research, and I did now go and look at some of the scripts and treatments that are online, and we know it's in the film, and I will do that. And it is a dehumanizing, eugenics, UN world government promotion, Agenda 21 brainwashing vehicle. And so we have the plot. I will give you a review coming up. I'll also premiere this piece we did on J.P. Morgan in the next hour. Now, by the way, we're getting hammered with calls and everything else. It's the craziest thing, and it's a very small part of our audience. But when you got 3 million listeners every day over 3 to 4 hours, there are some people that hear you wrong, or maybe I'm not a good communicator. But I saw on the YouTube video last night where I was talking about the magazine yesterday, people said, why is he attacking Ron Paul? Because it says, this man wants your guns, and it's clearly Obama. And then above it, it says, complete Ron Paul farewell address inside. And there's now a new thing that I'm attacking Ron Paul. I mean, so, no, it's Ron Paul's speech, folks. It's not attacking Ron Paul. I know most of the audience knows that. And I said, I'm going to print 100,000 Infowars.com bumper stickers, and I'm going to give them out free next month. We're designing a new sticker where we've got to get it printed, and then you can buy them right now in bulk at cost at InfoWarsStore.com. But I am going to print 100,000 and even pay the shipping to ship 500 to whoever emails us and pledges to hand them out to people and to stick them up in legal and lawful areas. That means like on the side of your barn or on your car or if a shopkeeper says you can. We do not want people to put them on private property because then they can demonize us with that. But the point is, 100,000 of them. We're going to print them next week. We probably won't have them to the first of the year. That's not yet. Not yet. Not yet. And I'm not attacking Ron Paul. It's his farewell address, I promise. Here, let me show you. Oh, man. See, Ron Paul, farewell address. And it's on that page, and it opens up as a poster with his image made up in the words. And then it's even on the back page here, the whole incredible speech. And that was my next point for you guys. Tom Woods, what did you think? Well, first off, with what Ron Paul's done in education, what countless others have done, the lensing effect, the chain reaction, the exponential growth that's now happening. That's why the globalists, I believe, are moving so quickly. What do you and Jason make of the nullification becoming discovered as the rightful remedy, as the film is called? And what did you think of Ron Paul's farewell address 2 weeks ago?
Well, let me tell you, I think these two things actually tie together, because if you had told me 3 years ago, 4 years ago, that we would actually be talking about nullification, I would have wanted to believe you, but I just wouldn't have believed it, because nullification is not considered something the New York Times wants us to talk about, and yet here it is. I mean, when I wrote the book Nullification in 2010, I wrote it because I noticed all these grassroots groups around the country were getting interested in it. Some of them had seen some talks I'd given on the subject, but I gave those talks as a historian. I didn't think I was going to be giving these talks about current events, that suddenly people are grabbing onto this. That's very exciting. And the thing is, I've had a lot of my books have gotten really nice blurbs from Ron Paul. I had a foreword by Ron Paul in one of my books. But for nullification, I knew he was probably going to run for president, so I didn't ask him to endorse that book, because I thought that's a very controversial position, state nullification. He's got enough baggage as it is. I don't want to burden him. And then he goes out on the campaign trail and more than once embraces the idea of nullification. So, I mean, I guess I should have asked him in the first place. I mean, I shouldn't have thought so little of the guy. I should have known he's a truth teller, come what may. So, yeah, so I thought the speech was great, but the very fact that a congressman gives a farewell speech and it's covered and talked about, and it gets all around the country. Most congressmen end their careers in complete obscurity. But it just goes to show the fact that he's basically a superstar. You can't not cover him.
And Tom, I would imagine, you know, the inside baseball. This is just the beginning of Ron Paul's career. Do you know about the big 3 announcements he's getting ready to make?
I might have a little bit of a sense of it, but I haven't talked to him about them. I know them one level removed, but I'm not totally sure.
Well, no. It's going to be pretty exciting. I just know some of the general stuff, and so we're going to be hearing a lot more from Ron Paul. I'm so sick of learning stuff and then not being able to tell people about it. It's like
I'll tell you one thing. It's not going to be. Let's get out there and endorse some guy who's with us on 12% of the issues. It's not going to be that type of activity. It's going to be hardcore. This is our message. Take it or leave it. And I'm not backing down. It's going to be that. It's going to be a 100 octane Ron Paul.
Yeah, exactly. You ain't seen nothing yet. Can we go out to break with that? You ain't seen nothing yet, baby. I think we've got it in the... We'll play the last 30 seconds or 40 seconds of this, of going out to break with that. Well, I'm here. You know, I got a million questions I could ask. What do you make of... speaking of Rand Paul, obviously I know Rand Paul. You know Rand Paul. He's a good guy. He has gone a little bit towards the establishment, I guess, to get ready to run for president in 4 years. He's now admitted that. But he is trying to get rid of the N.D.A.A. and do a lot of stuff. I think if he would have fully taken on his dad's mantle, there would have been no stopping him, George Washington type stuff. But, you know, as they say, a lot of sons end up wanting to go their own way. Both of you, what's your take on Rand Paul?
Well, I think that, you know, I think Rand is good that he's out there doing what he's doing. I think he's taken a stance on a few issues very strongly. So I think he has come out on issues like the T.S.A. and he's out there on N.D.A.A.
Marijuana, states' rights.
Absolutely. So I really think I tend to be pretty big tent about some of these things because I say, look, it's a win for victory. It's a win for liberty if we can try to attack these things at any level that we can. I'm not somebody who thinks that Rand Paul is going to be the next Ron Paul, but I do understand that we need individuals who can navigate. If they're going to be in politics, they've got to navigate the political machine. I have no idea what that.
I know, but I mean but that machine is so shot. He should be there pointing out it's the Titanic, so everybody goes to him when it goes under. I mean, I'm just telling you, his dad knows what he's doing. Not as from a moral perspective. When something is so evil, you want to fully distance yourself with it. I mean, when you get in a latrine, you don't clean it up. It gets all over you.
Absolutely, and so I think that to the degree that Rand Paul can speak the hardcore message of Ron Paul, I mean, Ron Paul changed my life. It's why I'm here right now. I wrote a book called Ron Paul, Father of the Tea Party. It's a biography of Ron Paul. I love the man. I love his no-compromise stance, and that's the only reason millions and millions of people got behind him.
And let's be clear, Rand Paul is great and an ally, and I agree with 95% of what he's doing. It's just the missed opportunity, and I know we're influencing him, because I know when I talk about this, it's having an effect. We need to say, hey, we think this is important. We think more hardcore, not less hardcore. That's how you beat the Republicans and the Democrats in that Senate race. Tom?
Well, you know, I of course, I'm sure you guys would agree with me. I wasn't happy with the Romney endorsement and certainly the willingness to go out and give speeches for Romney and a lot of this stuff. And then sometimes I see Rand Paul on TV and he's saying, yeah, I guess I could go along with closing loopholes or whatever. You know, and sometimes it sounds like it's one thing to say, I have to express the liberty message in a way that'll resonate with the Tea Party people. I'm okay with that. It's if you start talking like a DC Politico, I'm not okay with that. But on the other hand, if we compare Rand Paul to any of the old right senators or congressmen from the early 50s, if we compare him to Robert Taft, whom the Ron Paul people love Robert Taft, Rand Paul's much better than Robert Taft. He's a much better voting record.
Or even Barry Goldwater.
So, I mean, you know, I've been hard on him, but at the same time, I realize that I'm a lot easier on people who lived in the 1950s than I am on Rand Paul, even though he's better than all those
But
people.
I think that's what it is, though.
Keep an eye on the guy. Don't let him get away with anything.
Sure, but that's it. It's when it's now, it's personal. You invest that this is going to be the new Rand Paul, and then it doesn't actually turn out like that. I think that's what they need to understand is that's what gets people, you know, a little hyped up. But I agree. Listen, here's the issue. What do you guys think about this hoax? Because there's clearly election fraud. Not that I'm saying Romney was good, but I call elections like I see it. Looked like there was fraud against Al Gore in 2000. Clearly fraud. Bev Harris, who's been a Democrat, clearly fraud against Romney. Clearly the fix is in, and they say the mandate is here for more socialism and everything Obama wants, he wants, when half the public didn't even vote. And this Republicans need to become more socialist now. That's how you win. And we need to legalize all the illegals. No, we ought to elect Hispanics who are constitutionalists to a great extent, like Cruz. We need to, but you can't take 600 million Latin Americans in and give them welfare. It's going to bankrupt the country. Again, that's something Rand's coming out going, well, we don't want, Hispanics to think we're going to send them back to Mexico. Well, I mean, Mexico doesn't let other Latin Americans in or they would implode. I mean, we've got sinking third world, despotic crime syndicates literally sinking, and now we could take 30 million illegals in this country. It'd probably be a boom if there was no welfare. But the problem is these people get on welfare, they become state clients, and when they become citizens, 91% of them vote to take my guns, Tom. What do we do about this?
Yeah, I think this is probably the hardest issue to sort out because there are dangers on both sides. On the one hand, an anti-immigration policy could spill over into all kinds of civil liberties problems that would be employed against the regular people, which is what winds up happening. People who have followed all the rules and everything, they wind up somehow always being the ones that the laws are enforced against. So I'm worried about a police state against immigration. But on the other hand,
you try to come here legally, it's almost impossible, and they harass you. You come here illegally, they leave you alone.
Right, you're right. But then on the other hand, like Jefferson and some of the founding fathers, they were against the idea of mass immigration even from Europe, because their view was these people are going to bring to the United States old world political ideas. These people don't even know how to live in a free society. They're going to have monarchical ideas. I don't want a whole bunch of these people in our society.
In fact, they kicked a bunch of Tories out.
So it's really tricky to decide exactly under these circumstances what the right position is on immigration. This is one that I'm frankly stumped on. I mean, I am very concerned about immigration. I think it is a big problem, especially with the welfare state. But on the other hand, when you fight against it, they're going to want ID cards, they're going to want chips, they're going to want all these other things that we don't want them to have. So it's hard to know exactly what to do.
No, you're right. Well, the bottom line is throw it back in their court. Okay, don't tell illegals from all over the world, come here and have your baby for free, and then you get to stay and you all go on welfare. And on average, you get $61,000 a year. That's the new federal numbers. That's ridiculous, and that's going to end. You know, they have federal websites, we've shown them, that tell people how to come here and get on and they say, come here when you're pregnant, have the kid, you're in like Flynn.
And you know, it is a very small percentage of countries. I don't remember offhand, I wrote about this once. It's a very small percentage of countries that have birthright citizenship, almost none. So it would not, I mean, Mexico doesn't have that. So it would not be evil or racist to get rid of that, given that...
Exactly. Let me come to Mexico and get free welfare and have my kids there and all that. And maybe that's what I'm saying. How do you have free trade when the other countries aren't free? We call it free and it destroys us.
Well, in this particular case, Mexico has actually a very restrictive immigration policy. It's actually very hard for people to go to Mexico half the time. So the vast majority of the countries of the world have some kind of limits and certainly don't have birthright citizenship. So unless we're going to say all the countries of the world are wicked and racist, there's nothing wrong with taking...
Exactly. It's the welfare. We could take 30 million people a decade and would probably make us boom because we're not overfilled like people say if there was no welfare.
And also think of the type of people who would come.
They want to work.
To a system that doesn't have welfare. Be the industrious people who actually want to work.
Just like our country was founded.
There you go.
I'm ranting here. Jason Rink, you're over there. What's your take on this?
Well, I want to talk about the Obama mandate that he supposedly got with his re-election, because what we're seeing going on all over the country regarding nullification is the opposite of that. I mean, the Supreme Court ruled that Obamacare was constitutional based on the taxing authority of Congress, and so now you've got 15 states who've already said we're not going to implement the state exchanges, including states like Ohio and Michigan and states that you wouldn't think would be bucking this system.
It is a hoax that people are endorsing Obama.
Absolutely. And then you've got states like Washington and Colorado that have approved recreational marijuana when Obama has been worse about using the Department of Justice and the IRS to shake down state-based marijuana dispensaries. He's stepped up the war on drugs. And you've got states...
Three times the raids of Bush.
Absolutely. And so what we're seeing is now we've got 18 states that have medical marijuana or recreational marijuana. We've got 4 more states that are going to introduce in 2030.
And this is a guy that admits he's done marijuana and cocaine. There's photos of him smoking dope. How do you put people in prison for smoking pot when you're a pot smoker and the word is he smokes it right now? How do you do it? I don't smoke it, except maybe, you know, once every 2-3 years or something. And literally, it's a lot better on average than alcohol for people. But there's this demonization of it.
Yeah, and what we're seeing happening right now is we're seeing a cultural shift. We're seeing people waking up to this idea that, hey, the drug war is unconstitutional. There was no amendment passed like alcohol prohibition. It's throwing our countrymen in jail for nonviolent offenses.
And it gives the criminals money. It gives the criminals money.
Absolutely. It's riddled with holes, and we're starting to see conservatives coming around to this idea. Because
Pat Robertson.
Absolutely, and we've got...
That's because they've all smoked it. George Washington smoked it. Yeah. I'm sick of it. It's
collapsing, and the big secret is the federal government can't enforce these unconstitutional mandates and laws without the cooperation of the states. That's the big secret. And so they can't raid all the dispensaries. They can't shut down all of the activity. They can't go in there and run a state-based exchange. They need the states to run that for Obamacare to work. And so the big secret, it's the emperor has no clothes. And when states, state legislators, governors, citizens stand up, they use the ballot initiative.
Everybody's just got to drag their feet, block, not comply, criticize, shout down the system. Tom, isn't the system losing its credibility? I mean, I'm not just cheerleading. I've heard the Austin police chief going, no one trusts the government anymore. We've got to behave ourselves. Zbigniew Brzezinski's coming out and saying that. I mean, I think their power grab is a sign of their weakness.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, now, of course, we still have to bear in mind that we are very much a minority, but we are a minority that is intelligent and informed and hardworking, and we participate and we really work at this. So we are a very effective minority, and then it does concern them that a lot of people are unplugging from the message that the mainstream media is giving them. Now, at the same time, the other day, apparently, Joe Biden was out Christmas shopping at the local Costco in Washington, and people were hanging on him and posing for pictures, and I thought, now, we'll know when we're getting somewhere, when the vice president walks in and people turn their backs, they're giving him the raspberry.
Yeah, but so, you know that people that even hate folks, though, love celebrity and just want to feel important. That's part of the two-facedness of it. And, of course, he knew the area he was in. I mean, look at Romney today at McDonald's as another stunt. I mean, it's so ridiculous. What do you think Romney was at the White House doing, making sure his interest won't be hurt and telling Obama, hey, you know it was all staged?
Yeah, I have no idea, but I find it hard to believe that Obama was interested in getting Romney's advice on how to make government more efficient. I really find the official line very hard to swallow.
Well, they want conservatives to just go to sleep and pat us on the head and take our guns. I want to talk to you guys when we come back. What happens if the system tries to ban, not by law, but by order, which they're saying they may do, all semi-autos? I mean, because they try to physically take them. What will that cause? Will it cause a civil war? We'll be right back. All right, we got this little 5-minute segment, then one more with our guest, and then I'm going to premiere. We're going live into the 4th hour. If your local station doesn't carry it, a lot of them do. You can simply tune in via the audio streams at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. And starting on Monday, once a week, I am going to plug our new affiliates. I mean, it's quite a job having to, like, cut liners for, like, 10 stations a week, news stations. It is quite a job servicing the other 130 or so. I'm not complaining. It's just something new for me. Somebody's had, like, 60, 70, 100 stations, 120. And, I mean, these are, like, 50,000 watts in California coming online, in New York State, and Florida. I mean, it's exciting, folks. The liberty is getting out. Station managers and owners are saying, I used to think you were crazy, Jones, but I turned on CNN and they were announcing world government. So our information is becoming mainline, and we have to do that before we can really turn things around. And Ron Paul talked about global government in his farewell address, but I'm also going to start something where First Amendment champions in focus. I'm announcing this so that John Harmon up there at Network Affiliate, I'm just announcing this now, just telling him, he hadn't even heard of this, where every week I'm going to have like 5-10 minutes with a station manager on, or host, whoever they want, to promote that station, their sales staff, and a call to arms to get the word out about those affiliates. Now, I'm going to start with our Chicago affiliate next week, okay? I was going to plug it right now, but they have the big sheet because I was cutting a bunch of liners this morning for like an hour before I went on air. Tom Woods, we got one more segment with you coming up, but I have been saying a lot here. What about the danger of the kleptocrats trying to accelerate things into open confrontation? Because there's a lot of scurrying around. The Illinois governor just tried to ban semi-autos through executive fiat yesterday. Obama said he's going to get the guns under the radar, ban all semi-autos with just an ATF order. Well, what's your concern in that area?
Well, I mean, certainly there are state-level problems, and of course the federal government could, you know, not that it doesn't feel constrained by the Constitution, obviously, but I actually am not. I'm actually thinking that for the left anyway, the idea of gun control and stuff is almost dead. Even though they talk a lot about it, you know, you have a Columbine thing or whatever, and they talk about gun control, then nothing happens.
They'd rather just gut the money and bankrupt the Treasury. I mean, they know they're hurting us there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, because the gun people are, you would have to invest a huge amount of political capital here, and I feel like Obama's got a bunch of other things he wants to accomplish, and I think he'll talk a good game from the left point of view, but I think in practice, he's probably going to leave that issue alone.
So he wants to shut down half our power plants, pay General Motors to move to China, he doubled the number of people on food stamps. He wants to double that again. Just break us first, then get the guns later.
Well, that could be. That's a possible strategy. I mean, who knows?
What's your take on this?
I mean, look at the rest of his agenda. It's bad enough as it is.
Jason, what's your take on that question?
Well, I mean, I think, the UN recently made a comment about the fact that marijuana was legalized in a couple of states here.
No, they said it violates treaty. They want to run things.
Right. So, I mean, when you've got the UN making statements about that and talking about how that's problematic from their perspective, I don't think it's a far leap to think that the UN can and global forces will get involved in trying to disarm the American people. Now, the problem is there's a lot of guns out there, and I think that the American people still have that revolutionary spirit within them. No,
I agree with what you're saying, and Tom. We've checkmated them buying 3-4 million guns a month. The gun culture is the thing taking over. Tom, we're coming back in 1 minute. I want to, but to start asking you that right now. Do you think the gun culture is one of the strongest things we've got going for us?
I do. I think it's one thing, first of all, that unites everybody who is even slightly right of center. Like just the plain vanilla Republicans tend to be basically okay on guns. The Ron Paul people. Well, the neocons can go either way, right?
Well, stay there, yeah, but I mean, all the liberals I know are buying guns. We're even waking them up. Okay, Jason Rink, maker of Nullification. It's got Tom Woods in it. People can get the film at Infowars.com. You got a final 2 minutes, and I appreciate your time today. Tom Woods of TomWoods.com. Find all his great books and other evil pro-liberty stuff there. JasonRink.com as well. You got a final 2-minute statement, and then we're going to get one from Tom Woods, and then I'm going to come back and get into J.P. Morgan. They say they brought you things. Well, they said they underwrote America. Go ahead.
Well, I think I just want to say and point out that this is really all about the war on no. The war on whether or not we as free people, because that's what it's about. It's not about the states. It's about the people. It's about the sovereignty of the individual. Do we have the power to say no when our rights are violated, when our property is being violated?
No, you don't. I'm sorry.
That's the point. The federal government is clamping down on that. They're saying you don't have the ability to say no to unconstitutional drug wars. You don't have the ability to say no to the unconstitutional war on terror. You don't have the ability to say no to unconstitutional foreign wars or national health care or anything like that. You've got to take whatever policy we come up with, and we're going to shove it down your throats. And what we're saying with Tom's book, Nullification, with the 10th Amendment Center, with Nullification, the Rightful Remedy, is we're saying no.
Oh, so extreme.
That is not the case. We are saying that...
You're saying Washington shouldn't dictate everything, including what your kids eat? How dare you?
Yeah, and you know what? It's not just because they can't do it well. It's not just because the federal government's inefficient at doing these things.
It's not their jurisdiction.
Absolutely. They don't have the right, and they've turned it around. They've made it seem as though the federal government is supreme in all they do. And I like to ask people and say, well, if the federal government is supreme and the supremacy clause means they can do whatever they want, why enumerate any powers at all? Why not just make the Constitution one line, which says the federal government can do whatever it wants?
The federal government is God, and Obama is its prophet.
Absolutely. So
maybe we should do that.
Well, you know, I think it's getting to the point where we are being pressed, the people are being pressed to really as far as they can. And we're going to see over the next few years whether or not the states and the people and those that represent us at the state level, whether they have the cojones to stand up for it. I mean, whether or not they are going to stand with the people or whether they're going to stand...
Do we have huevos or do we not? Great points, Jason. Closing comments, Tom Woods.
Well, here's how I look at things. Sometimes I hear even a conservative group say we can't do nullification because it won't work. But to hear that coming from the conservatives when for the past 100 years, I can't see anything they've done has worked. Nothing they've done has slowed down the federal government.
Well, they've been compromised, yeah.
So, I mean, so my view is we could write one of those gag books and call it Great Conservative Victories and be one of those books full of blank pages. And so for these people to tell me this won't work, well, even if it doesn't work, it's no worse than the strategy you guys have adopted. But in other words, if we're going to have any success, we can't just do the same old thing over and over and over. We got to try something different. So, and incidentally, we have the arguments so overwhelmingly on our side. Today, I went through line by line. I went through a critic of nullification. I basically left this guy in shreds over at tomwoods.com. Just scroll down, you'll find it. And also, finally, one thing, Alex, you might get a kick out of is when I wrote the book Nullification, I knew that you're going to be attacked if you talk about nullification. You're evil, you're a racist, or whatever. So I made a video guessing what it would be like to be interviewed in the mainstream media about nullification. And it's called Interview with a Zombie. And if you go to interviewwithazombie.com, you'll see exactly what I mean. Here I am giving completely rational arguments, and the guy who plays the zombie just keeps calling me names and calling me names. But little by little, we're cracking through, because after 4 years of Obama and every critic of Obama being called a racist, these types of words just don't work anymore.
I agree. And you notice the neocons and liberals are like, don't do nullification, it's kooky, it's bad. But their whole program in the Defense Department is built around blocking it. And Tom, I want to get you on soon dealing with the economic meltdown that you've been predicting so accurately. And I want to get you back on the Nightly News as soon as you'd like. Jason Rink, Tom Woods, both in studio with us. Gentlemen, well, you're in studio. It feels like Tom's in studio via that Skype. Thank you both so much for being with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
This has been so extreme, saying no to foreign banks that run our federal government. This has been so un-American. We'll be right back. Stay with us. All right, we are back live, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us. You know, I got something deep down inside me. I don't like being a slave. I don't like a bunch of scum telling me what to do. I don't like seeing my country seized by foreign banks to carry out criminal operations worldwide. I don't watch a lot of television, but I did have family in for Thanksgiving. My wife did Thanksgiving this year, God bless her. And family wanted to watch NFL football. So NFL football was, you know, on all day long. And so I was sitting there. We had the audio off a lot of the time. But I saw this ad about Thanksgiving and America. And I was like, man, this is a really good ad. This is, and then at the end of it, it was brought to you by J.P. Morgan Chase. And folks, J.P. Morgan Chase is the emperor of the New World Order, and Goldman Sachs is Darth Vader, the enforcer. I mean, you cannot get higher in the pyramid of the Rothschild, Rockefeller combine, the folks that don't want a free market, the people that want a world government. These are the people destroying this country. And I'm not saying everybody that works at J.P. Morgan Chase is evil. I'm not saying, you know, that getting a home loan from them is, you know, that inherently you're bad. I'm saying the directives of it, they are the founders of the private Federal Reserve. They are the biggest shareholders of it. They're the ones that set the agenda. They're the ones that bankrolled Obama and Mitt Romney. And you see this. Well, I'm going to play the special report here, then we'll go to break, and I'll come back with my review of World War Z. I'm going to do a more detailed one on the Nightly News, but need to talk about this because it dovetails with all the eugenics and the dehumanization. But trying to condense down to 8-9 minutes here all the things they're doing. I mean, they're behind it all. If you're a prisonplanet.tv viewer, you'll see all the articles and documents where I back up my claims. If you're a radio listener, you can just write down notes of what I'm saying. We're also going to post it in the next hour at prisonplanet.com and Infowars.com on YouTube for everybody. Get this video out. It needs to go viral. But it is Goldman Sachs. They're the ones, if you got to say any group, destroying America. They're where the MF Global money went. I mean, this is New World Order, Eye of Sauron, Morgoth, Beelzebub, Baphomet, Satan, Leviathan. This is it. Let's go ahead and play this analysis that Aaron Dykes and I put together. Alex Jones here to report on one of the most sickening displays of high-tech propaganda I have ever witnessed. Since the week of Thanksgiving, the airwaves have been bombarded with a commercial paid for and produced by J.P. Morgan Chase, showing iconic images of soldiers returning home and the 9/11 attacks and people toasting each other over turkeys, the very essence of Americana. It looks like it was directed by Steven Spielberg. Let's analyze and break down this sickening piece of propaganda.
Let's give thanks for an idea. A grand idea called America.
Deftly conjuring an image that only existed in Norman Rockwell's America. We are then told finally that this image of a beautiful and strong America is brought to you by J.P. Morgan Chase, the very authors of our decline and eventual collapse. It is incredibly painful to see them putting out this pro-family, pro-America image so that they can brand themselves to it, so they can tie themselves to it when they are at the heart of destroying our republic and taking this country into debt bondage. Let's analyze this piece a little bit further. Imagine the cold-blooded calculation that when you're all sitting around watching the football game after enjoying the turkey with your family, grandma's there, the grandchildren are there, the fire's going, and you're bombarded every 10 minutes, because I was watching football with family as well, with J.P. Morgan Chase, J.P. Morgan Chase. They bring you America. They bring you prosperity. They bring you freedom when they are steering this country towards economic collapse, because that's how they conquer you, is by economic fraud. They want you in debt to them for nothing but zeros and ones that they created fraudulently on their derivative sheet. In his farewell address to Congress, Ron Paul pointed out who the real enemy is, the mega banks. He called them authoritarian psychopaths.
Psychopathic authoritarians endorse government-initiated force to change the world.
He went on to point out the fact that when Americans lost their homes, Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and others got bailed out.
Why did the big banks, the large corporations, and foreign banks and foreign central banks get bailed out in 2008, and the middle class lost their jobs and their homes?
The mega banks, led by J.P. Morgan Chase, over the last few decades, put their operatives into all the major regulatory positions.
I think the truth is that Wall Street regulates the Congress. They have untold, unlimited amounts of money which they use, by the way, to get the deregulation.
Then they implode the economy in 2008, threaten martial law if the government doesn't sign on to their too-big-to-fail derivatives. And they did the same thing in Europe. 3 bailouts later, the people are more poor than ever. The taxes are sky high. And the tax money is going to Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan, and others, who again brag that they've conquered the world.
Aren't we all just living and dying for what the central banks do? To answer your question, we are absolutely slaves to central banks, because and we'd love to be slaves of the economy, but the economic numbers continue to do nothing but trend. Is this global governance at last? Is it one world, the central bankers in charge?
If authoritarianism leads to poverty and war and less freedom for all individuals and is controlled by rich special interests, the people should be begging for liberty.
I think it's important to also note that they say America is about being a free market.
To free markets, free enterprise, and free refills.
So J.P. Morgan Chase implies that they are free market when their entire business model is designed around government bailouts and government contracts. And when Goldman Sachs and J.P. Morgan are at the core of pushing planned economies via Agenda 21, their business model is shutting down their competition using government regulation and then exempting themselves from those regulations while becoming bloated on the blood, sweat, and tears of the American people via corporate welfare.
The circumstances surrounding J.P. Morgan, how big an opportunity is this right now?
The American people are angry at Wall Street. You know what they want? They want our financial institutions to invest in the real economy. They want Wall Street to be lending money to businesses.
J.P. Morgan claims they want to get America moving in this ad, that they want to see that entrepreneurial spirit thrive. While making investments in China, where they have no carbon tax, J.P. Morgan is at the center of driving a program to shut down the majority of power plants in the country and, quote, bankrupt coal, which is projected to more than double the price of electricity. J.P. Morgan Chase and the other 5 mega banks are diametrically opposed to a real free market and a true system with competition and private property. They can only exist via a government license to operate their private Federal Reserve. While people like Jamie Dimon, who they're now pushing to be the new Treasury Secretary, sits on the highest levels of the private Federal Reserve Board while He sits as the head of J.P. Morgan Chase, giving trillions of dollars of free credit to himself and his shareholders. That gives a new meaning to conflict of interest and Fox guarding the henhouse. And who owns the private Federal Reserve? The Rockefellers and the Rothschilds. 12 years ago, they merged their banks. In 2012, they publicly merged their family fortunes. I'm not just talking to people in the United States. I'm talking to humans worldwide. We are under bankster occupation. They think you're stupid. They think you don't understand finance. They think you don't understand what fraud is. This is a criminal takeover by a group of globalists that have given themselves unlimited capital through fiat fraudulent derivatives. I want to close with a quote by one of our greatest founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, because he understood who the enemy was 230 plus years ago. We need to understand who the enemy is today. If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their currency, first by inflation, then by deflation, the banks and corporations that will grow up around them will deprive the people of all property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. I believe that banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than standing armies. The issuing power should be taken from the banks and restored to the people to whom it properly belongs. Thomas Jefferson, the issuing power. They can issue unlimited fraudulent derivatives paper and then have government sign on to the fraud they created and declare us their debt slaves. I'm Alex Jones for Infowars.com. And if you are watching this transmission, remember, you are the resistance. That's right, and we're going to come back, and I'm going to give you my review of the New World Order propaganda, World War Z. I tell you, Brad Pitt and his UN front war criminal wife really ought to be ashamed of themselves, no matter how many minority children they tow around with them as a set piece of how good they are. Brad Pitt, who I know knows about the New World Order. I've talked to multiple people in Hollywood that know him. Showed him my films, Aaron Russo's film. Aaron Russo actually, I'm not going to get into it. It's just really is a major bummer. But I guess he likes flying around in helicopters, being treated like he's important. I've gotten the breakdown on this film. It's really sickening, and it's just par for the course. Maybe Brad Pitt's just stupid. Maybe his wife's stupid too, but I don't think so. But there you go, J.P. Morgan Chase. Folks, a lot of you can be delusional and think you're a Democrat or Republican, think you're part of the power structure. They plan on ending this republic. They want you poor, and they want you dead. They are the enemy. They are the New World Order. They are Satan in my book. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Don't forget, I'll be back this Sunday live, 4 to 6 p.m., Lord willing, and we do need your prayers, not just your support and spreading the word about the broadcast, because make no mistake, we're giving the globalists a run for their money in defense of human life. Okay, as is often the case, I saw some emails coming into the office a few days ago. I saw some comments on YouTube last night. Hey, Alex, why aren't you covering and doing a film review for World War Z? You know, this is incredible propaganda. So I went and watched the trailer, and I went and found they've got the full synopsis online. They're not hiding that it is basically an adaptation of the book, and is the book, you know, broken into 3. And having my background knowledge, I immediately knew what was happening. This is a United Nations world government acclamation event. Angelina Jolie, and we have some shots of her up on screen for TV viewers. Radio listeners, just type in Angelina Jolie UN. Does all these disgusting photo ops claiming she's trying to help Africans when she's pushing the African invasion. She pushed the mass murder of Libya and handing it over to al-Qaeda. Now the 20-month attack on Syria using al-Qaeda. I mean, she is a world government front lady consciously, and because there's nothing worse than being a pro-war thug and then saying you're a humanitarian. I mean, it's like Obama, the Peace Prize winner. I mean, Angelina Jolie is really bad news. And it blows me away. Because when you hear from one Hollywood person, oh, yeah, they've seen your films, blah, blah, blah. This is like 10 years ago. And then again about 6 years ago. And then to hear it from another prominent Hollywood person, and you're like, they've seen my films and know about the New World Order, and they're doing all this. So they've clearly decided to join the dark side. I even said like 5 years ago, well, they must be infiltrating it. Yeah. No, that is not what's happening. And, I mean, they're just doing so much bad stuff. Brad Pitt, Angelina Jolie, you're disgusting. And this whole, I just hope when you're old and shriveled, if things even go that far, you remember how worthless your life was. There's still time to turn back, just like I told Lance Armstrong. There is still time. There is still time. And Brad Pitt may just be stupid. Angelina Jolie, just disgusting. Now, I'll do a larger review on the TV show tonight, but I just wanted to go over some of this. It pushes, and when I saw the trailer before I did research, I went, this is what it is. And I went and looked it up. It was that. That's how much I know these people. It's incredible. I first watched the trailer last night. I'm like, okay, everybody's saying, look at this. There's another zombie movie. It's all about dehumanization, teaching us humans are ugly and bad. The giant throng, is scum. So I went, and I read the IMDb Pro thing, and it was the same as the Wikipedia. Okay, so I know what the movie is. South African apartheid is the model for safe zones for the elite to protect themselves during the economic collapse from the zombies. So it's another archetypal preparation for the worldwide depression that's to bring us into Agenda 21 that will be accompanied by bioweapon releases that are used to reduce world population. White House Science Czar, John P. Holdren, Eco-Science, all their books, all their publications. I see what they wrote about 30, 40 years ago and till now, mirrored in the media, getting us ready for the consciousness, race, psychological narrative. So they're definitely thinking about doing this. This is the same military-industrial complex that detonated hundreds of hydrogen bombs in the upper atmosphere, trying to detonate the atmosphere. Source, declassified nuclear Department of Energy program, William Shatner's Trinity and Beyond. Okay, go look it up. They show film of this going on. These are crazy people. So don't think they won't release the bioweapon. All the SARS and the rest of it's just been a test. The United Nations implements worldwide the Rediker plan used to keep blacks on controlled zones, to keep the zombies out, but also to use the general public to fight and kill each other with the zombies. That's a metaphor for the police and military being used to take our guns, then we kill each other. This guy's showing his sophistication in the book. I'm going to read the book now. Continuing... most people die. World population's reduced down to almost nothing. The global government reconstitutes to save everyone. And the UN hero that will lead the world government fight against the zombies is Brad Pitt. And again, I'm not anti-Israel because Israel's just one set piece in this. But I saw it and I knew what it was and I went and looked it up and that's the plot. The giant walls that keep the Palestinians out, Israel is the only thing to stand and the only one to listen because they had walls, and you have images of Palestinians as basically roaches trying to climb up and get over the wall, and Brad Pitt, and we actually have some images of that. You guys can roll in the background if you want. Brad Pitt machine gunning with the Israelis, the hordes of Palestinians trying to come over the wall. And I mean, this is the type of stuff, and it's total programming. And folks, to know this at such a deep level, I saw the 2-minute trailer, knew what it was, went and read it. I knew it. I mean, I know these people because they just do the same thing over and over again. And you know what? Brad Pitt's probably, you think because somebody plays roles of a smart guy, he's smart. He must be dumb. I heard somewhere he spends like $500 on skin lotion a day to look like a pretty boy. Grow up and be a real man, Brad Pitt. Fight the New World Order. They're putting cancer viruses in kids' vaccines. Don't think you're immune. Brad Pitt, the New World Order is going to kill you one day. You watch. All right, ladies and gentlemen, more coming up. Stay with us.